May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So yesterday I had to go to my office meeting
Yeah.
and I had to miss most of the class. I'm wondering how
Okay.
do we see the recordings?
So there's if you so I'm the only one on it, so it's hard for me to type into the chat.
Okay,
But I can put it later. But if you actually go to YouTube
sure.
and then you type in KWNE as a search, from that part, it should bring up the KWNE page.
Okay.
And then from there, it actually will have all the ignites from, I'm going to say the last year, different ones. So any classes that you do miss, and then as well as some other trainings that they do with some command stuff as a region. So it's basically all kinds of videos, a collection of those from the region. So,
So KWNE for New England.
yep.
Okay, awesome. I'm looking now. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Anybody else have questions? So I'll probably repeat this again. As far as I know, I will be the only instructor today. And therefore, if at all, please interact. I want 100% interactive, so come off mute, ask questions. I will try to answer them as best as possible. The chat, I can see here and there, so it does make it a little tough when you're one person trying to move the screen. So if any of you, same thing, if you guys see somebody put something in the chat, please feel free to let me know. That way we can get the question answered for everybody. Looks like it's about 9 o'clock. I probably will give it a couple more minutes. That way, as you will learn real quick, there's called time and realtor time. And usually realtor time means like 5 minutes late. So. Does anybody have any questions from previous?
That's the interactive part, guys, when Mark asks the question.
Mark, how are you today?
Good, doing great. They get 2 marks for the price of 1 today, right?
Sweet.
Hey, who has something interesting that's happening in the market while we're waiting, so as not to waste some time this morning? What do you guys got going on? What's of note and interest that's happening in the market for you? Nobody's doing anything? It's important that we have this class then, I guess.
I mean, as far as personal business goes, I have an inspection on a contract, commercial property on Friday. So my first, I'm excited.
Absolutely. How about anybody else? Anything else going on? Everybody new, completely new to this within the last couple of months, within the first year?
Yeah, I'm within my just over a year, but pretty much a newbie. Haven't really done a transaction yet, but getting closer.
I got my license like 3 weeks ago.
Me too.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
I got my license in 1985, and I just started back with Keller Williams back in December.
Nice.
So
Just got my license in December.
I'm an old dog trying to learn new tricks.
In this market, yes, there's definitely probably some different tricks to learn and to take advantage of. So. Well, Mark, I'm assuming you're here to assist, and I very much appreciate that. Should we give it a minute or two more and then start?
I think get started. If they're late, they're late. The
Okay.
reality is that if you show up late to a listing appointment, the sellers take note. So let's get started. And those who are showing up late can come back and watch the first 5 minutes of the recording if they need to.
Perfect. So a quick introduction. So I'll go and then Mark can go. So I'm the TL up in Coastal Lakes and Mountains, which is up in New Hampshire. I cover the Lakes region from pretty much one side of the state to the other, midsection of New Hampshire. So I'm here to help teach the classes today, which is finding seller leads. So.
Cool. And I'm Mark Kavanagh. I am a team leader. I've been a team leader since 2007. I have had my real estate license since 1999. And I'm also an operating partner for another market center. So operating partner and team leader. And I've been doing this for a while, and I'm excited to be here with Mark and with you guys.
And just so everybody feels on the same page, my license became active in October. So I'm a newbie when it comes to that. So as far as everything, it's what you put into it and what you want to take out of all these classes. So I've attended these classes, bold. I'm in the process of graduating tomorrow from. So when I started, I knew nothing, and so come to teaching a class. And Mark can tell you, if you want to learn it better, go teach it somewhere. So practice, practice, practice. So I want to welcome everybody. And just kind of touch base, like anybody, I know I did in the very beginning, but more people now, any questions from any prior classes? Anything, I know somebody asked about videos. If you go to KWNE, the YouTube channel there, we'll have recordings from this one and any prior, because it runs every other month. So as well as some nice videos that Brooke, our regional tech trainers, put together on some command stuff as well. So
How soon do they put the videos up? Because when I went to see a past recording, unfortunately I couldn't get on. I was with a client. I didn't find it. How soon do they put them up?
I'm assuming I'm recording to the cloud right now, so I assume it should be there pretty soon. But here's the thing, if you're in this Ignite right now and you miss this class, if this section, like for the month of March, is not available, if you go back to January's, it's going to be very similar because, as you know, every other class someone teaches. So just find that one for March. I mean, for January, any of that, and then go ahead and listen to that. That will be pretty much the same exact material because it's all 2.0.
Okay.
And then if you wanted to, again, even to better yourself, when the new one comes back on, watch that one as well. So.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? So I know everyone talked about being newer. So is there anything that you guys can say so far that Ignite has helped you realize different? Like what your thought was coming in to this role as compared to what it is now after 7 classes? Some of the training that your market centers provided for you, or mentors, or any of that, is any of you guys any ahas or gratefulness for what you've learned so far?
It's definitely nice just to kind of flesh out the learning pathway, kind of taking things step by step, getting a chance to really kind of soak it in and understand what that means to the next step. And so I appreciate the course in general, but I appreciate the logical and in-depth progression of it all. I've also had my license just for a few weeks. And so it certainly seems to make makes everything more tangible, I guess.
Mark can attest for his many years in this as compared to mine. I've learned that when I came into this, I never thought selling real estate was easy, but I thought transactions were easier. And I've been from sales for 20 years. So I come from a sales background. So I understand selling, but it's interesting. And on all these classes and everything, there's a process. If you start it right the first, by, and it all works the same way. You get yourself into a process, you get yourself into a routine early, it becomes easier as things get busier, as you become more successful. If you're haphazard in the beginning and you're all over the place, it's harder as you become busy to reel it in. I just met with one of my teams. So my role and Mark's role as a team lead is to meet with teams and current agents, help them grow their business. Their team did about 48 million in business last year. But she actually a little over that 50. She's been in business for 10 plus years, amazing rock star agent, sat down and had a team meeting and talked about how they can be more cohesive. They're all over the place, setting like a weekly meetings, weekly stuff. So even somebody in the business 10 years that's been so busy and things going on, getting back to teaching some basics on this is what they should all be doing in moving forward. So it doesn't get change. You should be constantly learning and practicing. So anybody else have anything?
How about 10-4s? You guys are most of you guys have been on one of these classes before. This is session 8. So most of you should have been on at least 6 of these classes. There's a daily 10-4 that you guys should be doing. Who wants to report out on what their activities have looked like for their 10-4? You guys remember the 10-4? Yay or nay? This is the interactive part.
So this is actually my first class. I just happened to get an email about it and I jumped on, so I'm not familiar.
Okay. So we'll get you to go back. I'll refresh everybody's memory then on the 10-4. There's certain things that we should be doing every single day. Who remembers what those things are?
Input 10 contacts into your.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to put 10 into the database. What else are we going to do?
Reach out to 10.
We're going to communicate with 10. What else are we going to do?
Handwritten notes, wasn't that one of them?
Handwritten notes is one of them. What else?
Preview real estate.
Preview some real estate. And one of the things in this kind of market is that we want to remind you guys that you can't necessarily physically get into 10 properties in a day. You certainly can review them in your MLS virtually. And that's one of the more important things that we can do, is because we are in fact the economists of choice is the way that we would want to term it, which means that we need to understand what's going on in our markets. We aren't going to be very good at advising buyers and or sellers about the properties that are on the market if we don't understand what the market's doing. So that's one of the more important things that we do as newer licensees, and that will be ongoing as we go through our career. Who here in the past week has done any handwritten notes? So this is what I find, and Ellen, you were coming off mute. Did you do some?
So I did handwritten letters to expired listings.
Okay, cool. So very good. So Ellen is one out of, I don't know how many of us there are here, maybe 30, 40 people, something like that. And so it's been my experience, having taught Ignite a handful of times, that what happens is that our daily 10-4, people may or may not add, by the way, the numbers don't necessarily match. You might do more of one of the tactics than the others. What I would say is this: if I add 10 people to my database, it's because I talked to them. Ideally, I talk to 10 people that I haven't added to my database yet. I add them to my database. Now I write them a handwritten note that says, "Hey, Ellen, thanks for taking my call today. Really look forward to working with you in the future." And then I preview 10 houses, and the numbers will then match. And what I find is that people don't take the time to write handwritten notes in Ignite for some reason. It tends to be a mental block. Maybe it's because it costs 50 cents to send it out with a stamp. What I will tell you is this: people don't get real mail anymore. And so if you're missing that, you're missing an opportunity to differentiate yourself, because people don't get real mail anymore. So a handwritten note is a big deal. So don't slack on that component of it. And so my expectation would be this: when you come back to Ignite, I'm not sure if it's tomorrow or the next day or when it is, but the next session, have taken the time to write a handwritten note and drop it in the mail to the people that you talked to today when we lead generate. Is everyone cool with that? If you don't have the stamps, let me know. I'll get you a stamp. let me know. Okay, so that's the daily 10-4. By the way, guys, there are certain activities that you should be doing throughout your career. Mark just mentioned sitting down with a $50 million team, and they do that every day. They lead generate every day. Now, do they do it the way that we're teaching? Not necessarily. You can build a huge monster business and get confused about the way you do things, but having systems in place is what allows you to actually do it again and again and again systematically, and it's less painful if we do it that way. So that's the first thing that I would say is we should be paying attention to our 10-4 and don't skip out on those mailings. Sorry, Mark, take it from there.
That's okay. No, I appreciate it. I think this slide right here, successful agents do every day. It's been talked about in all the previous ones, but we're focusing on lead generate for buyers and sellers. So is what we're going to focus on today. The secret to being successful in real estate, there's really no secret. It's just like working hard. It's putting the effort in. And the one thing I learned about in a couple classes I had is raise your hand if anybody has ever owned a business before. Everybody, which there's 29% participants, we all should be raising our hand because we are all business owners. This is what our job is. Our job is we are whether we want to call our CEO, principal, the president of the company, but we are our own business. We're out there generating leads. We're out there making presentations. We're out there closing it. Therefore, what we do makes us successful. And I always tell new agents, because again, part of Mark and I's job is not only bringing agents from other agencies over, but it's new agents, onboarding them, talking them, bring them in. And the key thing is people are like, well, what would I should expect the first year if I'm going in all in? I always say 50, 60 hours and everyone's face dropped. What do you mean? I'm like, well, if you opened a store in the corner, right? Before you hire their employee, you're going to work the job. You're going to make sure you know what you're doing in the job, how you open it, turn on all the lights, open all the drapes, right? Turn the cash register on, make sure the computer's running, whatever you need to do as a transaction happens before you hire an employee. Because if you just hire an employee and don't know any of your steps, what happens? You both stand there looking at each other, nothing gets done, right? And you stumble upon. So starting now is getting these systems in place, as Mark talked about, and putting in the hours, because it's like an airplane, if you guys can see me. If you go like this, you're never going to hit the trees. You're never going to make it over the trees. If you go like this, you make it and take off. The quicker you first get training and then get your feet wet. Don't spend every waking day training day and night. Take this morning and the afternoon, do your 10-4s, right? And then the next morning, take the class. So here's a month. At this point, you've now added 200 contacts. Say if we just did it Monday through Friday, you've had 200 conversations. You've had, 200 letters gone out. You've visited 40 houses or done that, right? All that sets you up for month 2 is now you have more questions to ask, but you're into setting a process. And for the first 3 or 4 months, if you then take that 3 hours that Ignite is from 9 to 12 and move that to lead generation, guess what? We've now taken up 3 hours of your time every day that you guys attend this, which I think is amazing. Use that for lead generation once this ends. Don't now take it to sleep until 10 o'clock, right? Use it and you will be successful. And I think Mark can attest to that, is get up, get it done, and then go on and use the other activities in the afternoon. So
Fabio, your hand is raised. Did you have a question relative to those things? Or is it just the accidental hand raise?
No, sorry. I was just raising my hand when he said, raise your hands if you own a business.
Got it. Fabio's a business owner. Good, perfect.
So basically, we're going to understanding how to convert, how to first understand motivation, qualifying sellers, converting the leads, pre-qualifying, the listing presentations, recaps, and ahas. So that's kind of what the class is going to look like today. Again, as I said, and Mark will understand, as him and I jump in back and forth, we want this complete, feel comfortable. We're in a safe space here. What you say here, just so you know, I've taught many, many classes. If you have a question, guaranteed probably 25 other people have the same question. So be the brave person that asked the question, and the more questions everybody asks, that we all learn from it. Because I will tell you, Mark will probably tell you, he learns something new every day. And a question you have, he made, makes people think differently. So I appreciate you guys being interactive when it comes to that stuff. Real important part here is as you start calling people, as you start doing it at Keller Williams, we definitely subscribe to the do not call list. I think every market center should have access to one. Basically, you sign in there, you scrub all your numbers through it. You want to check before you call. You don't want to be getting yourself in trouble. And it's based on a phone number, not a name. So basically, you're going to go through as you find out if people tell you as you're calling, or you see people, make sure you take them off your list. I know they talk about it all the time, and I probably half pay attention sometimes at the fines, but there are some very excessive fines if you call the wrong people. So, and you know what? You're better off just playing by the rules. Any questions on this? Because it is important. If you
Guys,
don't know,
there's multi-million-dollar lawsuits. It's class action lawsuits that happen. So I know most of you guys look at this and go, yeah, I'm never making any phone calls that are to people that I don't know. Cool, you're probably protected, and yet you're not necessarily. So the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, is big business right now for attorneys. They're creating class action lawsuits. It includes business to business calls. So if you're calling vendors too, who put their names and their phone numbers on do not call lists, you could potentially get roped in for that as well. Rami, you want to go to talk to your broker in the office that you're at, and or the TL and or the OP. They can kind of direct you for where you would go. If you subscribe to a dialer, right? So most of you guys don't dial, right? You don't go do cold calling. So it's not as big an issue. If you do, you should be subscribing to a service that does the scrubbing for you, so you don't have to think too much about it. If you don't, and you're talking to people who actually are your friends, family relationships, those are less a concern because you have those relationships. If they've reached out to you, you're exempt for a little while until they say otherwise. By the way, Mark and Mark are not attorneys. We're just telling you, you can get yourself in trouble doing this, so be careful. And that's a conversation that you should be having with the leadership at your office.
Yeah, and your office should be making you aware of it. I know we do every partner meeting. So all kinds of different times, but yes, it is definitely important to make sure you're following that because there are lawsuits. Okay, so before I reveal, so I learned from past, finding several leads. Where do you think you will find leads from? Or where do you put your leads? Where do you find them? Where do you go to start making calls? What is one of the first things, I'm assuming, and the prior things that you guys have talked about, where do you think you would start looking to find seller leads? Anybody?
For Sphere.
Perfect. Database. Absolutely. Your sphere of influence, right? Which in turn should be your database. I know you new agents may say, well, I'm new. I've only been here 3 weeks. I don't have a database. See if it can, your phones, right? And our PC coach, Tim, is amazing at pointing out like these numbers, and Mark knows the numbers, the metrics of how many people you have in your phone, and you multiply it by a certain amount, and a certain number of those people, 6% of the people that are in your phone will do some real estate transaction. Well, I don't know if I really want to add that person that's in my phone in my database. Well, here's a good time to clean up your phone, because if you do not feel a person that is in your contact list should be in your database or data bank, however you want to call it, then guess what? Take them out of your phone. So any newer agents, the first thing you should do is sit by, open up your phone, your contact list, and start typing and putting those in command. If you're missing stuff for them, like you have their phone number, but you don't have their email, you kind of remember who they were because you met them at your sister's house at a housewarming party a couple of years ago. Guess what? Don't we have 10 people to call? 10 conversations. Therefore, if they're in your database, right, you then just are cleaning it up for your health scores. Does that make sense? How about other places that we can, how else would you say you could go about making finding seller leads.
Open houses?
Correct. Now, what do you mean by open houses?
If you visit an open house, like a couple of weeks ago, in doing my first 100 days, I visited a few open houses. And I think I met one person who said probably in the next year or two, she'll be willing to sell her house.
Now, were you friendly with the agent that was doing it?
No, she was just talking to another person and I stood beside them and overheard the conversation.
So I see Mark half smiling, and I will be the person on this. So that you have to be very careful from, because that can upset whoever the agent. So if I'm hosting the open house and Mark shows up and then kind of get somebody to talk to them, and then they want to go with Mark instead of me at my open house, that's not a good way to commingle with co-brokes. The best way for open houses would be going, and so we're in the same market center. Hey, Mark, I saw you having an open house. Can I shadow you today? Absolutely. Learn that way. Have your own open houses, right? And I know our market center, we have 730 people. There's constantly on Facebook, hey, I have an open house this weekend looking for somebody to help me out. So that is more so that I do not suggest going to somebody else's open house that you're not friends with and trying to get buyers from that way or sellers from that way. That does not play well in the sandbox. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, if you wouldn't want it done to you, you probably shouldn't do it to someone else. I guess is the bottom line, right? And so I agree with what Mark's saying there. You could get yourself in hot water, and other agents might choose not to work with you and or be mad at you for the rest of your career, which is bad. It's a smaller sandbox than you think. Now, the open houses are a great opportunity to meet sellers, because many people who are looking to buy are looking to sell as well. So what Mark said, if you can host one yourself, even if you're borrowing the listing, alternatively, if you want to go knock the doors around the open house that you're going to host. So say on Thursday, you go knock on the doors around there. By the way, check with your leadership, check with the town, make sure it's okay. Some towns require that you actually have a permit to do this. And yet you can go knock the door and introduce folks who are in the neighborhood. Hey, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Mark. I'm going to be hosting an open house down the street on Sunday. And I'm inviting neighbors who want to come take a peek at it first from 10 to 11 to come take a look at the house. And if they know somebody they want to help move into the neighborhood, have them come by first. Typically, I would get a mortgage person or someone else who would be willing to host mimosas, Bloody Marys, and whatever kind of pastries for that crew. And then the public open house starts an hour later. So, and what you do by doing that is you're meeting people in the neighborhood, right? This is the house that's for sale. Those people currently own a house in the neighborhood. That's the potential for another listing. So, and then you would follow that up with other meetings with people. You go knock on the door a second time to let them know that it went under agreement. You knock on the door a third time to let them know it's sold. And oh, by the way, we've got a ton of buyers left who want to buy in this neighborhood. So.
The Mark's point too is, how do you do it too, is even if it's not your open house, this is legal. Then after this is, Mark has an open house, his thing goes on, the house goes under contract. One of your buyers, because again, newer agents tend to have buyers. How do you turn it into a listing? Is they didn't get 123 Main Street, but you ask your buyer, hey, I know 123 Main Street we didn't get. Anywhere else in the house on that street, because obviously who picked it for the reason, was it the street or was it the house? Oh, it was the street. I really like that street. I could deal with a little different. Okay, pick which house. You want all of them. Send a letter, go knock on those doors and said, hey, my buyer didn't get 123, but they're interested in buying yours. Would you be willing to sell? Did you know that house sold for X number of dollars? And their eyes might light up because they weren't aware of that. And they only paid 200,000. Now it's worth 650 because the way the market is, right? Oh, now you just get a listing possibly, right? And you helped your buyer. So you're a superhero. So it's thinking outside the box and trying to leverage an open house. Even that's the way you would leverage open house that's not yours, to if you have buyers that were looking at it. But as far as, yes, open houses, attend those as much as possible. Like Mark said, they're back in full force now that the warm weather's coming out. you know, and things of that sort. Hit as many as you can on the weekends. Look and see what's in the market. Look and see, yes, it's okay to listen to what people are talking about, listen to what people are saying about the house. And then after the open house, go back home and do a CMA for it, right? Find out if they're asking 500,000, do comps. What do you think it's really worth? You know, and start making yourself familiar with the market, because when you do get listings and things of that sort, the more you know about the market around you, the better off you are. Question, go ahead.
Yeah, when it comes to open houses, like you were just talking, could you break down the process of doing an open house? Because I hear all the time, open house, this, that, but I don't really know where to begin and which order to, what the steps in order to do it to do it.
So so in the chat, I shared a link like at the very beginning, so you may have to scroll up to it. But it is the toolkit. So basically something we're going to do later on is a questionnaire, but in there is an open house checklist, kind of a basic one. But basically after you sign the listing, you talk to the person and say, hey, listen, we'd really like to have an open house. Most of the time I'm seeing in my area that people are putting the listing, they're letting them know on Wednesday coming soon. They release the listing on Friday, on Saturday and Sunday, they're having open houses. And then for the open house, you basically, the checklist that will go through it is you're putting it on Facebook, you're putting it in MLS, and MLS then will set that. So we have Nearing here in New Hampshire, and it will send out if people want to receive, it'll say an open house on there. It'll send out emails if that's what you've signed up to do and people have received them. You as part of your, being the listing agent is you're out there marketing it as much as possible. Get as much information out there as possible that there's an open house.
And we can borrow, you said we can do that too?
What do you mean?
Well, you said borrow a listing or something,
Yeah,
borrow.
top agents, Ian, don't have time to host all the open houses that they have listings for. And so they're very often, depending on, what their volume of business is, they'll go, hey, newbies who want to take this open house, feel free, or they'll go out and they'll ask for it. Does anybody want to host an open house? I've got one, pick the date, pick the time. I've promised that to my seller and yet I'm not going to do it. And so that creates an opportunity for you to go collect buyer leads and or seller leads, depending on which methodologies you're using.
Okay, and that's people within my office or area. Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, we have an internal Facebook page of all our agents, and it happens. Usually I tell all the new agents two things. So if you have an internal Facebook page, definitely, or, let it go, hey, by the way, I'm a new agent. If you guys have open houses, I'd love to shadow. Can I shadow you doing this? Can I shadow you doing that? Right? If they're a good agent, or if they have the time, they want to do it, they will definitely let you shadow. You just follow, just don't say anything, just watch what they're doing. And then as well as if there's open houses, they may let you run it, or the first one, they may say, yes, shadow me on this one. And then if you do a good job of listening and being interactive and helping them, as Mark said, there's a lot of agents that are busy that all they like is listings, but they want to spend time with their family because that's important to them. So they'll say, hey, I have this open house, or I'm out of town here. Is there somebody interested? And sometimes there's none, which shocks me. And then sometimes there's like 25 people that raise their hand, because ultimately, depending on how the agent works, you could offer you some compensation via unrepresented buyers with a split, right? So some will say, hey, if you get a buyer from this, I'll split it with you 50-50 and I will help you close the deal, right? I'll give you, you pay a 25% referral back to the person that was holding the open house and you run with it, right? I say the 50-50 works well, because then you say, hey, I'll do 50-50 if you help me with this, right? Because here's an active transaction that you're actually helping with. So, so yes, definitely raise your hand, look out, start looking to see in the MLS. There's ways to do it. And I'm not sure what state you're from. I know Mass is a little different.
Rhode Island.
But ours, you can actually pull up the market center and find out if there's open houses happening. And then I tell the agents to do that and look and reach out to, hey, Mark, I see you have an open house this weekend, if it's not on the page. So yes, a good way to get experience, get in contact with buyers, and just listen to what their questions are asking, right? Because if you take note of the questions they're asking of you, and then know that that's what you're going to need to know, it helps you better your listing presentation as well as your buyer presentations when things come along. So
Could you also resend the toolkit? I don't see it in the chat here.
so it should be a link to a Google Drive. I'm doing it right now, sorry. So if you click on that, well, it should be in there. If you click on that, it is a link to the New England Google Drive that will have all kinds of different things in it.
So as we're looking at that, guys, where else do we find seller leads? So open houses, one great opportunity, your data bank, the daily 10-4 calls, where else? Think about what listings are. Listings are the result of a seller. Where do sellers come from? They're people, right? Where do they come from? What makes people move, guys?
The connections, referrals, marketing. If somebody saw our ad on social media or any kind of website.
Okay, before we jump into how to find these people, who are these people? Who's going to move?
Usually when good things or bad things happen, they move.
Okay, cool. Tell me more about that, Ellen.
So like weddings, births, divorces, loss of house.
Divorce lawyers, estate attorneys.
You guys get that? Guys, think about this. What makes us move? Ellen just told you it's good things and bad things. So there's a different variety of reasons why people move, but this is who the sellers are. So our job is to figure out who's going to move. How do I find that category of person? So if it's a good thing, and so Ellen just mentioned, and Mark mentioned, babies are born, right? Now all of a sudden my house is way too small. I got married. Maybe I have a condo and I want to buy a single family house. I got a job promotion. I'm moving out of the state, right? So that's a good thing, or it could be bad things. What are the bad things? Someone talk a little bit about those things. What are the things that cause people to move that could be a negative thing?
Death. So somebody dies, sometimes the children will have to sell that person's house.
Okay, so people dying, that's definitely a big one. What else?
Divorce.
Divorce, what else?
Illness or disabilities.
Illness, disability, lost a job, right? There's the company that was here got shut down. Now there is no job. There's all these things that happen. Again, they're good, they're bad, they're life transitions. And one of the most important things that we can do is recognize that our job is to be able to help them through it, whether it's positive or negative. But all of those things create that. By the way, other people might choose to sell. Most of those things create an I need to sell situation. And we want the I need to because that speaks to motivation. The I want to, they might want to if they can get $10 million, and it might not be worth $10 million. So now I've got an unmotivated person. I'm listing a property that may or may not sell because they want too much. The I need to sell, they sell. And so our job is to find the motivated. And in those categories of I'm going to need to sell, those are powerful places to be. So, all right. So keep those things in mind as we move forward.
Anywhere else that you guys? How about FSBOs, right? Finding those, looking those up, right? They want to sell. They maybe try for how many months and don't sell, right? Stay on top of them. Call on them, right? Anybody?
It's a strange thing in this market, guys, to find it. There we go. Linda popped it up, expireds. expireds are less common in this market than they used to be, right? Because a lot of things sell. What I can say is this: they might have expired last year, they might have expired 2 years ago because their price was too high, and that price might be okay now. Does that make sense? They wanted 250, it was worth 220. Now it's worth 275, but they don't know that because they expired already. They went on the market, they tried it out, they weren't worth it, they moved on. So those people, the older expireds, right, Wayne says they're overpriced. They were at one time, they might not be anymore. The one that expired today is more likely to be overpriced than the one that expired a long time ago or recent past.
Another thing which I just became aware of from the mastermind and talking is the expired lands, which is a different one too, because, you know, same thing with land, not enough houses on the market, or we haven't done the due diligence to find all the houses. Therefore, there's land and, you know, looking at some of those expireds that most people aren't looking at nowadays. So, because same thing, land was, people weren't looking for it at one point in time because it was an overabundance of houses. Now, all of a sudden the market's tighter. So looking those up. And again, if you're doing it and you're an innovator in your market, you might find people that gave up on it because it sat on there for 10 years. Now there's no land available or on the market. That might actually, you know, they may be able to get more money for it now and actually help them as a service. Anything else? So I clicked on the last one now, referrals. Can somebody tell me what referrals what it means to you in the real estate world and what that some different kinds of them are?
If you sell someone's house, if you help them sell, or if you help them buy the house, and if you did a good job with it, most likely you're gonna get a referral from that person because they were happy with your services. That's what I think the referrals would be.
One type, absolutely.
You can get referrals just about from anybody that you know, not only people that you have dealt with. I used to have my own business. This is why I'm getting back into real estate. I lost it during pandemic. And I had transportation, and my business built over 5 years, just people referring me to get my ride. So you could do the same thing, hopefully, with houses.
Absolutely. So, you
The more
know, just,
people you know.
yeah, just because Mark's not ready to sell right now, but he knows you, it's letting Mark know that you're in real estate, that you sell houses and you do all that stuff. And he may just say, oh, but I was just sitting with my sister yesterday, and, you know, her daughter's looking to, you know, to buy a house. Oh, I never even thought of you, right? And then that kind of segues. So people, you know, even though they know you're a real estate agent, you have to keep telling them about 150 times. How about
I heard at least 7.
So how about like people in trades, like people like plumbers, electricians, hairdressers, your barber, your landscaper, right? Letting them
Right.
know, right? You take care of them, you refer people to them. What do they do in return?
They refer people to us.
Correct. And they may not be ready to buy now, and they may never buy a house from you. They may have somebody that they've used a couple times, like Mark here. But guess what? Mark's not referring any business to them. And what better way to thank somebody for getting business is refer business back to you, correct? So
Trying to join a BNI also would help.
there's, things like BNI, there's things like the Rotary, different, you know, your local chamber, things to get your name out there. And if you go and do stuff with the intention of actually doing the stuff, not just for referrals, being genuine and being yourself, you will get 3 times more referrals than going in there, putting your name, you know, raising a hand at Rotary and saying, hey, by the way, I'm in real estate. I'll do all the right things. And I know of a couple of agents up here in the Seacoast area that have done that, and it's a slower process. But I can tell you, I know one of them has been in Rotary for 5 years now and gets between 5 to 10 referrals a year through Rotary, just from doing the things, attending the events, doing all the right things as part of that's what they signed up for. and it makes it so that there's less cold calling involved. So.
I just had a referral from a friend of mine who knew that I was a realtor, and his friend was selling the house. He already bought the new one. So right now I'm basically in contract with that person. So referrals are very strong way to, I think, create the business.
Absolutely. Because again, in my business and Mark's business, we also recruit agents from outside the market center, right? So if I get a referral from one of my agents that said, hey, by the way, you should really call, Beth over at XYZ brokerage. I think she'd be a really good fit. Now, when I'm calling Beth, I'm saying, hey, Rachel over here that I work with, mention your name that you'd be a good fit. Would you like to grab coffee? Would you have 5 minutes to talk about what it might look like? That conversation sounds so much better than me calling, hey, I'm Mark from Keller Williams. You want to come work for me, right? There's
Right.
that warm connection. There's that warm thing. It does. So yes, absolutely. Telling people that you are in real estate will be one of the most important things you can do. Anybody else? So let's move on then. So now next thing is qualifying and converting seller leads. Can anybody tell me what that means?
Understanding their motivation and whether they're actually serious about selling or not.
Yep. And it means having a conversation, right? So you're basically, the lead is you've really, it's a one-way conversation with somebody, you're reaching out to them, all of a sudden they respond back, right? And say, hey, yeah, I was thinking about it. I think the market's good. Maybe I could do this. I'm not really sure where I would go. And you start that two-way conversation. From that point, then they're now going from a lead to a contact. And at that point, it's a conversation where you now then need to try to convert them to get that lead or to figure out where they stand, right? Where they are in the cycle. Is it, I'm going to do it today? I'm going to do it in the next 6 months. Am I going to do it in 5 years, right? That way, you know where you want to nurture them and what questions and concerns you have for them. So. Anybody want to talk about these questions, right? So these are the important questions, right? When you connect with somebody and you want to that, if you would, please tell me a little bit about your family, job, and hobby, life, etc. Do we all know what that acronym is that who is talking about? Have you heard Ford before? Can anybody tell me what Ford means?
It's not just a car. Okay.
I mean, I can guess.
You guys are sleepy. You guys are sleepy. Come on, go do it.
Family, occupation, recreation, dream.
And why is that important, Eric?
It gives you talking points. It gives you talking points that aren't necessarily beating someone over the head with a real estate intention. It's a way to connect with your client and therefore make the whole rest of the conversation at ease. And and if you learn something in the process, great. As far as real estate, great. But the intention is to build rapport.
Yeah, 100%, guys. It's all about them, right? Family, occupation, recreation, dreams. It's the things that people care about. They all care about one of those things. They might not care about all of them, and yet they all care about one of them at least. And so what I would say is this: there's literally been studies done where they've checked to see what it is that people find the most intriguing when they have conversations, and it's actually you not talking. It's actually you letting them talk about themselves and the things that matter to them. So, they'll do these studies, and Mark goes out and he hangs out with Mark Lesniak, and he goes, "So, Mark, tell me about yourself." And after that conversation and that meeting, Mark fills out some kind of questionnaire, and he says, boy, that Mark Kavanagh, he's brilliant. He's really smart. He's really awesome. And what did Mark do? He just shut up and listened. And by the way, as we're having these conversations, you know, these sound scripty if you read them. And if you just make it a conversation, it doesn't sound scripty and it's not unnatural. And so that's not to say you can't have these questions listed on a piece of paper to make sure that you know, hit things in certain topics, because you can. You just have to, you have to frame that the correct way. So in my experience, I would say to Mark, hey, Mark, really excited to talk with you about listing your house. You know, if this is that conversation, this is a really important process. So I've taken the time to write down some notes. Are you okay if I make some notes on this piece of paper? And Mark goes, sure. And now I just got permission to have my cheat sheet in front of me, and I can actually have whatever questions I want on that cheat sheet so that I can ask those questions. And then I don't have to worry about where am I going next. I can listen, and that really matters. So again, Eric, good call, Ford. I'm not sure who else was saying what Ford is, and Mark, good job bringing that up. Guys, it's a really simple acronym so that we can figure out these are things that matter to most people. And by the way, the further down that list you get, the dreams one in particular, that's a more challenging conversation to get to, and yet it's a really, really important one. So for your family, your occupation, where you work, what you do for fun, recreation, and your dreams, where you going. So.
And the nice thing knowing this stuff too, as you see to the left of the question, get details and add it to your database, is you use tags, right? So how many kids that, you know, you're making sure you put in that stuff, because when you have future conversations, we're not just getting this forward once, we're using it in the conversations. You know, Mark has 2 daughters, right? Guess what? Hey, Mark, so how are your daughters today? Oh, yeah. Oh, she plays basketball, right? You know what I mean? So if you start with family questions, all walls come down. The closer you become and the better you build that relationship, so that it's not just about a transaction, right? Because ultimately that one transaction, it could go well, but if you never connect to that person as a person, you will not get a referral, nor may you not get future business. But if you connect as a person, that relationship is great, and all the wheels fall off the bus. Like literally the wheels fall off the bus at the closing table, everybody's sweating, it goes through. But guess what? You're at right before that meeting, you're saying, so, hey, your son had that basketball tournament this weekend. How did they do? Oh my God, he got MVP. They won the state championship. Awesome. Congratulations. That just made that dumpster fire that's going to happen seem like nothing, because you were connected personally. And when that person goes out and gets you a referral, he was a nice guy. He really felt like he was invested in me, right? And that's what Dale Carnegie says. Everyone likes to hear their own name, right? So if you can make it about them more than, and all this stuff you have, it's a cheat sheet. You pull up your database before you call them. And I know that, you know, this happens, or, hey, how's things going at the Ford plant, right? So all that stuff is very, very important. That simple thing can lead to a future thing. So, and it helps with tagging. You know, from there you want to go like what, right? Because you also want to, what are they looking to do? So again, hey, I might want to sell my house. Okay, can you tell me what that looks like? Now, I didn't say what does that look like. Can you tell me what that might look like? Can you tell me where, you know, what you might be looking to do, right? So you frame it in a question so that it's not a yes or no, but you get answers. And like Mark said, write it down, right? Because if you're listening and writing things down, people think that's great. So don't ever be afraid to do that.
So guys, let's take 30 seconds right now. I want you guys to pop out and say, what are some of the questions? These aren't the only questions. So come up with a good question and relay it to the class. Who's got another rapport building question that they can actually pop in and share with the class? And you guys write it down. This would be on page 5 of your participant guide. Or you guys have no good questions? You guys don't build rapport with people? Eric, I'll call on you. Come on, you know what Ford was. What's a good question you ask?
Oh, I mean, I don't know that I don't know that my go-tos are anything too far off of Ford. I mean, they all kind of fall in line with that. I mean,
okay.
Where's your family? I know you're not necessarily supposed to ask where you're from, but where's your family at? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so and one of the things too, again, check with your brokers about this. There have been times where you could get yourself in trouble by saying family because family's a protected class, and where you're from, Eric just indicated you could get yourself in hot water for that one. As a rapport building thing, that's usually not going to be an issue, and if your bedside manner is okay, it's going to be a non-issue. Most people, by the way, are starting out with around here. They go, hey, how about them socks, right? Depending on people's behavioral styles, this is either a thing that they enjoy doing or that they really don't enjoy doing, but they know they have to do, so they'll do it anyway. And so I might say to Mark, hey, how about the socks? And he goes, yeah, great. They really are, they're doing a great job. And you go, okay, great. That was our rapport building. We're moving on. If you're a businessy type person, a high D behavioral style or something like that, really direct and to the point. I's and S's. And again, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the DISC or with the KPA, and yet the more warm, gregarious, outgoing types, this is their wheelhouse. They love this. So and then a high C behavioral style, a more critical thinker, they may or may not be really interested in this, but they will have those conversations with you because they know that they're expected to. So what other questions we have, guys? Just a couple more.
Pets.
Pets, huge. Not a protected class, right, Stephen? And it's huge for a lot of people.
Yeah, they're just as important as we were having the conversation yesterday, introducing the team. So they all kind of step back and, everybody had a pet, right? Whether it's cats, dogs. So it's and they're like family. So it is important knowing that. And it's important taking the note too, because as you start looking for, as you're determining things, you want to know if they have pets, not to walk in and they have 15 dogs and you're looking to sell their house, right? It's always nice to know those things ahead of time.
I don't have a question, but I would like to know what do you guys think about it? So the observation, whenever you meet a person who is a prospective client, it's very important to have to observe how they are, because sometimes the smaller things can begin a really good conversations, which is basically our job of creating the connection. For example, if what kind of clothes are they wearing? Oh, I like these shoes. So you might have a good conversation about it. Who knows? As you said, if they have pets or not. I remember this person that I was talking to, and I was helping him putting some stuff in his car, right? And I saw a lot of fur. So I asked him, hey, do you own a pet? And he was like, oh, I have two big dogs. So we had a good conversation about it. I think the observation, as much as you're observant, you will find a lot of things to talk about.
That's very true. I will tell people, and I laugh about it. Mark can't tell sometimes, but I'm an introvert. And there's Ashley is a part of a market center and she teaches it, but it's a tough thing. I will not walk into a room and introduce myself to everybody, but once I know Mark, we're now best friends, right? So we have calls together. I see him. So it's that getting that comfort level down, you know what I mean? To a point. But yeah, just being genuine and honest, right? Just like it's your friend, talk to that person like they're a person. The rest of the business will come from that, right? If your intention is just to talk to them to get business, people can see through that. If you're talking to them to learn about them and then business comes up, that ultimately what it needs to, but it's the being a genuine and asking the questions and having that sort of connection, people will tend to open up farther. So. Any other questions? Okay.
I have a brief question.
Absolutely.
This may not entirely have to do with Ford, but or any of these lead-ins, but there are properties that people sell that are a little bit more than the average, and they interview realtors to choose between who they want to sell them. You following me?
Absolutely.
Is there a place to go to find, say,
Are you talking high net worth individuals?
Yeah. I have a friend who he actually kind of interviewed for a position as a realtor for for this seller. He had multiple properties actually, but it wasn't really a formal interview, but he showed up on the day that I should probably ask him anyway. Sorry, I don't mean to go on
It's a valid point, right? So what we're looking for is the seller. The seller is, that's a different component of the category that we're talking about, right? They either need to sell or would choose to sell. And so that speaks to motivation. And yet you're talking about a different subsection of the seller population, which is a high net worth individual. And so to find high net worth individuals, and by the way, there's great courses on luxury and how to tap into that market. But what I would say is this. If you think about where high net worth individuals spend their time, you should also spend your time in those circles. That is how you get business with high net worth individuals. And so, I've talked to a lot of coaches about this, and what they would say is this: high net worth individuals spend time at a golf course. They spend time at the yacht club. They spend time at the charity functions in your community. They're on boards. And so those are places where if you make it your habit to spend your other time, you will build relations there, and it's always a relationship game. So your opportunities with high net worth individuals will increase when you're spending time with high net worth individuals. And by the way, don't do it in a super businessy way. If you show up at the yacht club to try to get business, people will know that. You should probably like sailing if you're going to do that. If you like golf, you should probably do the golf course instead, right? So there's different places where people, interact. And if you think about where are high net worth individuals, that's where you should spend time if you're looking to work luxury.
Right. Yeah. This particular contact or friend, colleague, he just fell into it. Somebody gave him a lead and he showed up on the day, and it was a Weston property in Weston, Massachusetts, and it just happened to get it. So I'm just curious. I should probably follow. I mean, I think those are good suggestions, but I'm certainly not going to join a yacht club or a golf club or.
And it's not going to be something, but as you start becoming seasoned and you become, what I'm saying, you then determine what markets you want to play in, right? I'm up in the Lakes region. There's some luxury, Keller Williams luxury agents that they focus on that top business, but they'll also say that that's limited. So everybody can't play in that space. There's other people that will do the middle space. There's other people that focus on condos, mobile homes, right? Those are, and you pick whether it's an area or a specialty, and you focus on that in the beginning, because if you get really good at that, that becomes easy. It allows you then to jump into a different one. If you try and do 10 different types of categories and the whole state of Massachusetts, it sounds like where you're from, right? That's impossible for one agent. You never get good at doing one thing, and you're a jack of all trades, a master of none, right? So don't box yourself in, but start thinking about, if you already say you're not going to jump in the luxury, that's perfect, right? A new agent will struggle if they've never done business in a luxury, but give it yourself a year or two when you're seasoned and you understand the markets more. Then that's a conversation you say is, you know what? I now want to tap into that market and I'm going to do it. So.
So nobody is contacting like Coldwell Banker and Keller Williams when they want to sell their properties and say, hey, we'd like 5 of your top realtors or somebody to come out and.
Those people have done their research, right? They're looking at, there was a huge development that went for sale up in New Hampshire. They put out that they were looking for somebody. It went to
where did they put that out?
They did it. They reached out they knew who to reach out to, right? They
sort
did
of behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, they reached out to 5 different teams and interviewed them, and it was picked on social media. That was it was a social media presence for a stretch on pricing in a certain area, if that makes sense. But beautiful homes. And the team that won had social media presence. Wasn't the biggest team, they're actually a really good team, but they wouldn't be the first one that most people would have thought, but their social media presence got it. But yeah, they had done their research. These people got not even a call, a letter first that said, hey, we're going to be interviewing a few teams. Could you want to be part of the process? Now, who doesn't raise their hand at that? But yes, they're not reaching out to Keller Williams. If they are serious, they're going to do their research and you're going to get the call personally. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay. So as we start moving in, as seller leads, right? So we literally took it from a lead to a contact now, right? So now we got to find out, like, if somebody said, I'm thinking about selling my house, right? Now we got to figure out, is it need to, want to, or thinking about it, right? And how we kind of categorize that is like A is need to, right? Somebody passed away, there's a divorce going on, had another baby, and honestly, we're in an apartment, right? I mean, we're in this small condo that's like 1 bedroom and there's no way we can do it. So that's the need to, right? Tagging, putting that in, way different follow-up schedule to B, which is, 15, 60 days, maybe 3 to 4 months, maybe. You're going to be doing that as B. And then C would be anything 6 months and out, right? Is what I look at in a sales prospect. Does anybody understand the reason why? And you probably can read the side, but I want to hear from, why would you tag things differently? What would be the purpose? Is they're a seller, right? They're going to sell their property. Why would you tag them differently?
To see how much contact you want to have with them, if it's going to be daily, weekly, or monthly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It basically, it's helping you understand, how often you follow up with them, right? If somebody says they're 6 months out, calling them every day probably won't get you that person to convert for you. Difference is somebody says that somebody passed away, they need to sell it because the kids live in Texas and the house is in New Hampshire or Mass, and they have to sell it because they don't want to deal with it, right? Calling them once a month, you probably won't get that sale either, right? So it's knowing your audience, and that's part of the questions is, what is your intentions? When do you potentially see what you want to do, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, why would tagging it be important as well? Like, not only just to know now, which is great answer, right? The communication, but what do you do with this information, right? So we now have a seller that is a B. What do we do with it? Could be a stretch of a question, but I'm throwing it out there.
I would throw them on a different smart plan depending on who they were, Mark.
Perfect.
And yeah.
Now, how many people are familiar with Command? Does everybody know the Keller Williams CRM, which is Command?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So basically what happens is as you put somebody in as quote unquote a lead, right? You're doing that. The minute you start having that two-way conversation, they are now a contact. There's a button to click and you click it on and now they're a contact. The key is tagging these people, right? Because the tags you put in to them allows you to run different smart plans, as Mark said, right? If it's a C, right, you're going to put a long-term nurture program that there's multiple touches over a long period of time. There's ways that are beyond me, because I don't do it as much because I don't sell, is to have other smart plans be launched within it, right? But the basic is to figure out what you want to focus your time on, right? The A's will get more of your time. The B's will get a little less of your time, but more than C's. And then C's are maybe not as much human interaction, more of a automated, until they start moving closer, which should be, your knowledge that as it gets closer to B, you're now changing things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And guys, that remember too, that it's not just command, it's any CRM. Any good CRM has contact and ways to create smart plans. So if you're not using command, it doesn't mean you can't use something that is the equivalent of a smart plan. You still can. And yet we can teach you how to use it in command. There are other ways to do it if that's the one that you choose to use.
Yeah, so that was a skipping one. So as far as converting leads now, does anybody know, like, so you call somebody, you're having this dialogue for somebody, what is your ultimate goal?
Set an appointment.
Correct. And how do you go about? Do you just assume? Do you ask for it? You know,
Ask for it, I would say.
Okay.
Absolutely.
now, thinking back to the categories, A, B, and C, if Mark and I having a conversation and he was an A, would I be asking for an appointment?
Yes, like that same day.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I was a B,
Yeah.
would I be asking for an appointment?
Yeah. I would say, still,
No, that didn't sound very convincing. I want to be convinced. Would you ask for an appointment?
yes, I would.
Okay. How about a C? That kind of seems far out. Do you think we should first C as well?
Yes.
Okay. So absolutely, no matter what their tag is, ultimately in the phone, we can have that conversation. But as we all know, this Zoom is a little tough, right? Like having a conversation, even whether you Zoomed, and I know during the pandemic, that was all it was, but just having somebody, like if it's a C, it's not a sit down at their kitchen table, hashing out what they want to do. Maybe it's, hey, let's grab a coffee. I'd like to get to know you a little bit better, because ultimately I know in the future, you want to sell your house. What I want to do is start thinking about stuff, because there may be something that I could find sooner that might actually, help you progress. Would that sound good, Mark, to go just grab coffee and get to know each other better?
Absolutely, it would. Yep,
So-
absolutely.
So it's just what you want to do. A, I'm probably going to say, hey, do you guys have time tomorrow? Now, as far as if you're asking for the appointment, right? What's the best way to go about doing that? You give them part of this is, do you give them one time? Hey, do you have tomorrow at 1 o'clock? Do you say, hey, I'm available tomorrow at 1 and tomorrow's Thursday. So tomorrow at 1 and Friday at 10. Do you just say, hey, what times are you available? I'll make it work for you. So out of A, B, and C on that, what would be the best way to respond? And why?
Personally, I usually go for C, just asking them when they're available and then trying to work around that. But I understand that I would understand how that might not be the best. Maybe giving them one time would be better to kind of have something a little more concrete. But
So
Giving them a choice, maybe give them 2 times that you can give them 2 time frames that they can book an appointment with you.
Okay.
Give them a choice. Instead of
Anybody else?
asking them, you just give them two times and they can choose from there.
Okay. Anybody else? So I would go with B, which is the 2 times, right? And the reason being is a couple reasons. A, makes them seem like you're busy, right? Hey, I have between here and here, right? I didn't say 1 o'clock both days. I picked 1 o'clock and 10 o'clock, right? So they're 2 different times. So it sounds like I'm busy in the morning one day, in the afternoon, I'm kind of tied up a little bit, right? So it's a mind game. But 2, you're controlling if they can't, if you can, you're controlling your schedule, right? You know that you've already looked at your schedule. You've now put them in blocks that you're available, because I shouldn't have picked 10 o'clock on Friday because that's lead generation time. So my bad on that. But you're giving times, you're controlling it, you're setting boundaries, right? If you go with C, which ultimately, when I first started selling, I used to tell customers, yeah, whatever you're available, I'll make things, right? I'll make my time around yours, right? The first thing is they never come up with the time, right? You don't, they had this, it's such a big answer. People can't come up with the time, so you never get anywhere, right? Well, let me get back to you, right? Let me check my schedule and get back to you. If you give them the time, there's no question. There's 2 times, right? If you give them 1 and it doesn't work, then you start going through the thing of, well, how about this day? How about this, right? So basically, it's kind of twofold, right? You give them 2 choices, but then you're actually within your boundaries of what you have personally open. Does that make sense to people?
Guys, there's a ton of different ways. There's no real right way and wrong way to do this, but what Mark's pointing out to you guys is that this is what doctors and dentists do, right? So when you call a professional office, this is how they handle it. They go, yeah, you can do 7 a.m. on, 7 months from now, or we can get you in at 4:46 p.m. tomorrow. And they go, oh, they both suck. 4:46 tomorrow, I guess it is. And you go, yep, good. And again, that puts you completely in control of how the conversation goes and where it happens, so that you're not trying to jump through hoops for your scheduling. It's something that, again, professionals use it. It makes them feel like they made a choice, even though the choice wasn't necessarily the one that they would have made had you given them the wide open world.
And then the same thing, if they come back and say, you know what, during the day I work, I can do after 5. At that point, don't say up to them again. Say, hey, how about then tomorrow night at 5 o'clock or 5:30, right? So you then again dictate the schedule. And they may say the weekend. In the beginning, you may not have as much control like nights and weekends, but that's okay. We want to get business, right? So does that make sense what Mark and I just talked about?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Cool. So continuing along those veins, right? So that you have 3 things you're trying to do anytime you have a conversation with people. The first is you're trying to get an appointment, right? The second is that we are asking for referrals. So we're trying to get, they're not the business. They have someone else who could be the business. So we're looking for a referral from them. And then the third thing is we're looking for the relationship to improve. And so a lot of us are people, and we're competitive sometimes. And so if all that I had in my mind was that if I don't get an appointment with them or a referral from them, then I've lost, then we're gonna lose a lot. And so one of the best things that we can do is shift our mindset around that, so that we have an understanding that there's 3 things that we're looking to do with every conversation we have. The first is I want an appointment, right? That would be awesome. The second is I want a referral. That would also be awesome. And the third thing is, as long as they don't leave liking me less than they did when the call started, I won. And so it's a building of rapport, building of relationship, not creating a situation where they say, please never call me again. And that's usually one we can win. We'll lose a lot less often as long as we're normal human beings when we have these conversations. So again, Mark, hey, any real estate needs I can fulfill for you? No, great. Okay, so know anybody that's looking to buy or sell that I could help? I love working with great people like you. Is there anybody else in your world that I could help out and take care of? Your sister I know, blah, 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 whatever. He goes, no, I don't. Great. Hey, so how's your family doing? And now we go into Ford. And so one of the things that I would say is that you should do it in this order too. And the reason for that is scientific as well, which is that if I make a phone call to Austin and I say to Austin, hey, Austin, how's the family? I'm thinking of you. I really care about you. And then I spring business on him. He goes, he didn't really care about me. It was a business call. Whereas if I go into the conversation and I go, hey, Austin, I got a quick business question for you. I'm just curious, when are you thinking about buying your next investment property? And he goes, I actually don't think about that. Oh, really? Well, we've got a class that I could, invite you to and get you a copy of a book. Have you ever thought about that? We start that dialogue. Or you know anybody who's interested in investing in properties or whatever. Again, you guys get that part. There's scripts all over the place. The third thing is Now I spring into Austin. I really do care about you. Hey, I've got another couple of minutes and I just want to check in on you. How are you doing? How's your family doing? What's going on? It's a crazy world. And now instead of Mark didn't care about me, he made it seem like he cared about me. And then it was a business call. I've done it completely different, which is it's business, business, business. And oh, by the way, I care enough about you that I ended my call that way. And that just feels much more genuine. Would you guys agree? That's called a tie down, by the way.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna say, yeah, the last thing in their mind is family, right? And it's about them. And when they get off the phone, they're like, oh, he is really a nice guy. So does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
You guys are an active room this morning. Bill, thank God you're here because you're responding every once in a while. Austin, you too. A few of the other guys are doing a nice job. The rest of you are all asleep. I'm not sure if any was actually there, if they just turned it on so it looks like they're here and they're going to come back and watch it later.
I'm
Interact,
sorry,
you
Peter,
guys.
I'm actually in the middle of a transaction. I apologize. I am listening.
Do it, Joel. Make the transaction happen and watch it again later if you missed anything.
I will, thanks.
Yeah. So now we've now figured out, like, we're converting leads, and now how do you pre-qualify them, right? Like how, once a seller, once they're willing to sell and they've agreed to have an appointment, that we're now going to talk about the next steps. So basically the net pre-qualifying sellers is understanding their motivation. What does that mean? Like what does that translate to what we just discussed?
Good things, bad things.
Perfect, right? The ABCs, right? The motivation is good things, bad things. So that's A, probably. B, well, I get my, my son's graduating, and from high school, once he's gone, I'm gone. Or C, I'm not really sure, but I know the neighbor's house just sold for way more than we thought it was. Maybe I could cash out and move somewhere else, right? Again, pre-qualifying them, find out what their motivation is to determine what kind of time you're putting into it, but as well as how you attack, how you not attack, but how you address the situation as well. So I know this one sounds tough. Position yourself as an expert, right? So how could you, if all of us being new, right? How would we go about if Mark's looking to sell 123 Main Street, right? And we're going to be going to talk to them, and about it. What would something we should do probably before we have these in-depth conversations with Mark?
No team statistics and stuff, and take that with us to show that it's not just us, that we have a team behind us.
Yep. What else?
Know the neighborhood.
Know the neighborhood, absolutely. Pull up the house, probably could be an MLS from somewhere before, right? Ultimately,
Yes.
somehow, somewhere that house sold. Something else? Or
Do a
somebody-
CMA for them ahead of time.
100%, right? Kind of know what the value of the house is before going in, right? Just have some sort of conversation. If this person's an A or a B, right? You want to kind of understand what the ballpark is. Like Mark said, if somebody's looking to, they want $1 million for the house, and real legitimately it's worth 300,000, right? Even in this market, that might be tough. So, win the listing, right? Important, win it. Allow the price of the home to sell for the most amount of money in the short amount of time, right? And then properly set sellers' expectations. So a couple things with that is, having that CMA, right? Kind of know what it is. You kind of know what the price point is going in. You want to have a value proposition for yourself, right? Like even if you're new, you want to come up like what differentiates you from somebody else. It's going to help you to win it, right? Like you don't have to tell them you're new, right? If they ask, great. If not, the best part is no matter how new you are, what's behind you?
I have a question.
Exactly. So I wear this proud, Keller Williams, right? Doesn't make a difference what brokerage you're at. We are all under the Keller Williams name, a pretty powerful brand. So that's my number one backing, right? My second backing is I'm coastal lakes and mountains. So I have over 730 agents that have my back as well as a leadership team, right? So between those two, I'm better than most brokerages out there, right? So that being said is, yeah, I'm new, but my proposition is I have this. So if I go in and, we have your property, you know what the best thing is, even before it heads to MLS, I have 730 agents that have potential buyers that will be looking at your property. So no matter what, if nobody comes to your open house, I have that. Does that sound like it's something, right? You have to have something a value proposition, and it can change over time. But you want to start thinking of what value are you going to bring? What are you going to do differently? Mark and I both have, we're both Mark. What? He's a K, I'm a C. That's a difference, right? I mean, he has way more experience and all that stuff, but that doesn't make a difference, right? It's what you position yourself and how you set you as an expert is going to be key. So
Musa, I saw you had a question. What was that you were going to throw out there, Musa?
So let's say if somebody want to sell the house, right? And we go there and we do our CMA, and let's say this house is worth with the market evaluation about $400,000, but this person wants $800,000. In that kind of situation, how can we deal with this situation?
That's a fantastic question. So
I was going to say, does anybody have the answer before you and I, Mark, answer it?
I think here's my little take on it, and if they're that unreasonable, if they don't want to listen to your CMA, then you need to walk. But other people might have something else to say.
I would agree with you that if they're not willing to price it at a price at which it will sell, then you probably aren't interested. So there are a lot of scripts around this. So may I give you guys one?
Sure.
Okay. So Musa, it sounds like you have an idea of where the price of this property is at. Where'd you come up with that, if you don't mind my asking?
So we basically do go through this process that's called CMA, where we basically find out the.
Okay, you be the Musa. Hold on, step back. You be the seller. You're looking for 800K from me right now. So Musa, where'd you come up with this number, $800,000?
I just think I want to my property worth this much.
Sure. So is that just a number that you picked out, or is there a place where you got that number?
There is a guy there is a house down the street, and it's smaller than mine, and it's sold for $500,000. So why wouldn't my house be selling for $800,000?
Sure, I can absolutely appreciate that. So at this point, aside from the price though, Musa, is there any reason why you wouldn't list with me tonight if we can't figure that pricing out?
I mean, the only reason why we would not be able to list with you would be if I'm not getting the $800,000.
Sure, but if we were to take care of the pricing and we were to agree on what the price is that would cause your house to sell, are you prepared to list the property with me tonight?
Yes.
Great. Okay, guys. Okay, so pause for a second, Musa. Guys, what did I just do?
Pricing right out of it.
Asked for the sale.
Okay, so so a couple things. I got him to agree that he's willing to list with me tonight. Is there any other reason? I asked him, is there any other reason why we wouldn't list tonight? And he said, no other reason. So I've just isolated the objection. That's one of the most important things you can do, because if we take care of this objection without isolating it, he's going to come back with another one later. Does that make sense? We've learned this in other Ignite classes, in other script classes. So it's going to be important for us to isolate the objection. And at this point, it's just a pricing thing. He agrees that I'm the best guy to sell the house for him. Yes. And so all we need to do now is figure out the price. And so now we can take it a couple of different ways. We can talk about stocks. There's a script around stocks, which basically goes like this. Musa, you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Hey, so Musa, let me ask you a question. Are you familiar with stocks?
Yes, a little bit.
Okay, so you understand that there's a ticker and there's a price that the stock is worth today if you go to sell it, right?
Yes.
Okay, and by the way, guys, pause for a second. The only reason I would use this is if he said to me, Mark, I need to get $800,000 because I owe that much or because of something else. Because what I'm gonna talk to him about now is the market determines the price. We don't get to determine the price based on what we hope. And so Musa, let me ask you this: if you bought stock for $50, it was Disney stock, and the stock is worth $40 today, what do you think they'll pay? What do you think someone would pay you for that stock right now?
$40.
$40. That's exactly right. And so you might have paid $50 for that stock, but it's worth $40 now. Would you agree to that?
Yes. Right.
Your house is just like that. And so educated buyers are going to come in and they're going to know what your house is worth. And so if your house is worth $40 right now, they'll pay you $40 for it, but they're not going to be willing to pay you $50 just because you paid $50 2 weeks ago. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so that's the stock script. But guys, anytime we can use a script that includes a story and or something that they can understand from real life to help them go this time's like that time, we do it. And stocks is one of those. Does that make sense to everybody?
Thank you.
Go like this, yeah. So okay, so let me do a different one. Let me do a different one because the reality is that that's probably not what you're going to hear right now because they bought it for 200 and they still want to get 800. So in that case, what I would do is I'm going to grab 3 listings, right? One that's priced at 200,000, one that's priced at 300,000, one that's priced at 400,000. The one that's at 200 is a teardown. The one that's at 300 is probably where the market is. The one that's at $400,000 might be nicer than his house. I set those 3 down and I say, so Musa, let me ask you a question. If you were going to buy a home today, put yourself in the mind of a buyer. Which one would you choose?
I'll buy this one, the nice one.
Okay, and what's the price on that one, Musa?
400,000.
Okay, great. You're really smart. By the way, I pump him up. I pump his tires. You're really smart. You shop just like most consumers do, Musa, which is that you found value in that. By the way, it doesn't matter if you picked 300 or 200. I'm going to ask him why. If he goes, I'm going to buy the $200,000 one, I'm going to go, okay, fine. Most people don't, by the way. It's just like when you pick a bottle of wine at a restaurant. You pick the second least expensive bottle of wine on there because you don't know enough about wine to do it. And you go, oh, that one. And that's why we give them 3 options, right? This mid-priced one is the one that we want to price it for. And so, or again, if my example was poor, 400, 500, 600, I don't know, whatever his number was that we're trying to get him to come to, we probably put that in the middle. And we say, why did you do that, Musa? And Musa goes, well, it was because it wasn't the most expensive. It seemed like it was probably a good value. It was similar to the one that was the most expensive, but it was a little less money. And I go, yep, you're really super smart. You shop just like most consumers. So if that's what you would do as a buyer, what do you think most other buyers would do if we were to price your home at the top number? And he will go, they would probably buy this one first. And I go, right. So do you want to be the one that sells first, or do you want to be the one that causes other homes to sell?
Mm-hmm.
And he gets to decide, but at least it's his price. And oh, by the way, 800 is not the price. And oh, by the way, most of the time when you have a conversation with somebody, they're going to tell you because they went to Zillow and looked it up.
Yeah.
Is that right? And so you should have done that already before you got there, because they're going to have done it. And you should go to everywhere else. RPR, you guys are familiar with the Realtor Property Resource or no? You're all members of the National Association of Realtors. You have something called RPR. You go in and you put your NRDS number in there, which is your National Association ID, and you create an account for yourself. And it allows you to basically do a quick CMA that will print out a 55, 60-page report for you in a matter of moments. It's all algorithm based. You can alter it just like you can with any other market analysis tool. And the reality is you don't care about that. You just want the algorithm part. And that algorithm allows you to do the entire United States except parts of Northern Maine. Sorry about that, you guys. And you can do that quickly. And you'll have a 50-page report that shows that you put effort into this. And it gives a range. And it's going to be a range that uses an algorithm similar to what Zillow did, and similar to what Homes.com did, and similar to Redfin and everything else. Joelle says she's on there right now. She's popping stuff up. So it's a really valuable tool you guys should be taking advantage of. And it will allow you to put together some information that many people will not. Many of your competitors have no idea that it's there. You all have access to it. Every realtor in the country has access to it, and most people don't use it.
I'm sorry, could you go over that again? Where do we get that?
So it's a tool called RPR.
RPR?
RPO.
You need to be a member of a board, correct? Like
You have to be a member of a realtor association. Yep.
Right, right.
And RPR is the Realtor Property Resource. And you can actually grab the information from it, create an account. You would use your NRDS, which you can look up at realtor.org. It's your National Association ID. By the way, you can use your MLS too, or Cloud CMA, or any other market analysis tool. Yeah, Linda just said Cloud CMA. There's a bunch of them. Here's why I like RPR. Because most agents don't pay attention. And they don't know they have this. And anytime we can be different, if everybody else in the world is using Cloud CMA, I'm going to bring a Cloud CMA with me, and I'm also going to bring one from RPR. And oh, by the way, hey, Mark, can I share this screen for a second or no?
You probably can. Let me. You should have it.
Okay.
Don't ask me how I'm going to get it back. So
Yeah, I'll give it back to you in a second. So here's what I'm going to do, guys. Let's see if I can find this. Okay, so sharing the screen, and it says Zestimate. You guys have that? Zestimate accuracy. Can you see it or no?
No.
Newman. All right, let's try it differently. Let's try a different.
Nope, you should try it now, Mark.
Okay. Zestimate accuracy, share.
There we go.
You guys have it? Okay. So what I want you to be aware of, because this is a conversation, this is the Musa conversation around $800,000. So if you just type in Zestimate accuracy, you can go down and find it. What is a Zestimate? Zillow's Zestimate accuracy. So you click on that button, and it tells you what the accuracy of the Zestimate is. And so I want you to understand that Zestimate is estimate with a Z in front of it. The owners of Zillow have said this. It's nothing more than an estimate with a Z in front of it. And this shows you what the accuracy is and the median error. What's the average price of a property in New England right now, guys, or in the nation? What do you think the average price point is for a home that we're selling?
250, 240.
400K? What are we, 400, 450, 500, somewhere in that range? Let's call it 400 to be conservative, right? Some of us are going to be 200, by the way. That's okay. Doesn't matter. Go down to the closest metro area that we have is Boston for most of us, right? And look at Boston across this line. The median error is 2.6%. On a $500,000 house, 2.6% actually means 2.6% plus or 2.6% minus, which is a delta of 5%. Not huge. There are 18.2 thousand houses with a Zestimate in them. 3/4 of them are within 5%, which means that 1/4 of them are not within 5%. You guys get that? That's what we need to be pointing out. And 5% means 5% plus, 5% minus, which is 10%. On a $400,000 house, what's 10%? It's a $40,000 swing. 5% are not within 10%. 94.7% are within 10%. That's a 20% swing. That's an $80,000 swing, you guys. 1 out of 20 houses is plus or minus 10 off the actual number when it sells. By the way, 1% of all homes that they have listed is a 40% swing. $40,000, or I should say $400,000 times 40% is $160,000 swing. That's pretty significant. I know it's only 1 out of 20, but what I'm telling, I just need to bring that to their attention. And I need to point it out to them like that, because otherwise they go, oh, this thing's right. And you go, no, let's just be aware of what it is. It's just an estimate. And that's the same tool that I'm bringing up. So I just wanted to share that with you, because most of you guys, if you don't, they're going there, right? Just go like this. Everybody goes there. That's where they get their pricing. So just understand that they're doing it, and you want to know what it is that they're doing, and then make sure that you don't let them go on believing that that's what's happening without addressing it, because it's happening. And I'm going to make you oh, you're still the host, Mark. You can, I stopped sharing. You can start sharing.
Perfect. So why don't we, a good moment, ending that, take a 10-minute break. I'm sure we have to, whatever we need to do, check emails, make a quick call. So it is 10:36. So let's be back at 10:46 or so. If that works for everybody.
That's fine.
All right.
Sorry for the tangent, Mark.
It's all good. All good. I'm happy, believe me.
हाँ जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। हाँ, वीडियो कॉल की है। किधर जा रही हैं? अस्सलाम वालेकुम। हेलो हेलो भाई मैं अपने घर हूँ। हाँ, किधर बाजार जा रही? हाँ, उधर से फिश फिले मिलता है ना, इस वजह से। यहाँ पे चिकन और बीफ वाले मिलते हैं। हाँ हाँ, और उसमें सब ठीक।
Unknown caller.
Okay, everybody, it's 10:46. Are we all back?
Woohoo.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So just to touch base a little bit before we move on to this pre-listing questionnaire. So if you want, while we're discussing a little bit, that link that I put in the chat, that had that link to that Google Drive. When you click on it, one of the things down, it will have the pre-listing questionnaire. If you guys want to start going in and as we're having the discussion, find that, because what we're going to do is break out into some groups. I think there is at some 37 participants. So if I divide that out, probably about 12 groups or so. That way there's 3 people in a group. And basically what we'll do is we'll practice kind of take turns, picking somebody of the group of 3 and actually going through and asking these questions, right? The only way we're going to get good at it is practicing it. So that being said, we'll have a couple more things about the pre-qualifying to talk about. And when we do break into those small groups, I just do ask that if you can turn your camera on and participate, so that it would not be fair if somebody got in like, myself, and then there's all of a sudden 2 people that weren't participating. So the whole point of this, again, is practicing some scripts, but just going through, talking about, asking about it, and then we'll come back. We'll do that for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and go over the, review that, how that went and how it felt. But before we do break into groups, I'm going to start working on breaking in the groups. Is as far as when we talked about like being the expert, Mark brought up that, the Zillow part, the Zestimate and all that. Honestly, if my thought on that was to print out that one piece, that one section, and bring it with you with your packet. So if somebody does bring it up, you're showing the Massachusetts piece, right? Because that would be that would be our basis for all our market centers in the region. It doesn't hurt, because part of your value proposition is having something to combat that, right? You should know what the number is. When we start talking about stuff too, is if you're coming in with a CMA, I can tell you, talking to most of the agents up here, Mark can probably confirm, is I'm not coming in and saying your house is worth 500,000, like a Zestimate, right? You're going to give that delta of, hey, it's going to be between 475 and 525, 525 being the absolute highest you think, but your target point may be more at 5, right? And then that way they can pick. But as Mark told and talked about during his scripts part too, is like when he talked about the stocks, is the seller's not going to determine the price. It's going to be determined ultimately by the buyers. And if you're not having that conversation and setting the standards up front, that, we should really let them pick it out, because ultimately they're going to choose. And as Mark said, do you want to be the house that sells, that sells first, or the house that sets everybody else on fire to buy, if yours does sell? Conversations of, hey, if we list it at 800,000 and we don't have anything within 14 days, do you agree we're going to drop the price by 50,000, right? Or 100,000? Or just things of, the one thing I always talk about up in the Lakes region is you can never undervalue a house. The best thing to do is when you actually put it on the MLS and everybody thinks that's a bargain, it's a good way to get 80 people to an open house. And guess what you get from that? Leads, leads, leads. So just different ways of scripting, talking, but it's being comfortable with that. So, so does everybody have a chance to go and find that, find the, whatchamacallit?
Pre-listing questionnaire?
Yes, that's what it was. I'm trying to do the set up the break room and
So,
do that.
so while Mark's setting up those rooms too, I should mention something else, which is that we're all in different states. So we were looking at the metro section on that Zestimate page. There's a page for states as well. And what I can tell you is that the metro area of Boston is much more accurate than your state is. So if you're in New Hampshire or Vermont or Maine, right now, I'm just looking at the state section. Maine, less than 70% are within 5%, which is a 10% swing because it's 5 up, 5 down. And almost 3% are plus or minus 20% on the total value. That's a significant amount, you guys. New Hampshire is 69.9% are within 5, which is a 10% swing, and 98.6%, so almost double what it is in Massachusetts, are plus or minus 20%. Vermont, 71% are within 5%, and about 4% are off by as much as 20% either way. So, again, in Rhode Island, let's see, Rhode Island is 76% are within 5%, and almost 99% are within 20%. But that means 1 out of 20 houses or 1 out of 100 houses is off by 20% up or 20% down. It's a wild number, you guys. So use that one if you're far enough away from the Boston metro area. Don't use the metro version, use the state version. How are we doing on rooms, Mark?
I think we are good. Do I hit? So I've never done the rooms before. So I have everyone set up in rooms. Do you guys see that it went?
Yes, yep. We're good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I have a question. Are we paired off or are we waiting for someone else?
Everybody should be paired off. Unfortunately,
Got
I
it.
see a lot of people that have not joined. So
Okay, so they just have to click the join button. All right, but we're paired off, right? It's just 2 of us?
yes, there's one that has 3. Everybody else has 2.
Okay, great, thanks.
You're welcome.
I lost my link. Hold on, I forget how to do it. Oh, there it is.
I ended up in a room by myself, Mark.
Yeah, I know. The person hasn't joined with you. I see,
Okay.
but we can talk outside of it.
Yeah.
So,
It's okay.
yeah,
Who's still in the room and not just a pretty face?
there's 5. There's Linda, Sarah, David, Jennifer, and Rami. So they are just here. And I feel bad because there's some people moved to,
I see Lewis, Wayne, Shannon, Linda, Sarah, David, Jen.
yeah, I'm trying to make it so that there's people.
They can pop off. They're actually being recorded, but we can have a conversation here that people could see. So what do you guys want to talk about the pre-listing questionnaire? Or are they not actually here? They haven't
I
come
don't
in.
think they're actually here, yeah.
No worries.
I had to brush up on my command this morning to go through for the listing part. So I'll go through actual command and the listing presentation.
Perfect. Yeah, there are so many tools. And, you know, again, this is something that people will end up watching since this part's being recorded now. So there are so many tools, if you guys are watching this later, that are within our ecosystem. And so if you go to the connect button, the education tab at mykw.kw.com, you'll find so much education it will hurt your head. And so we were talking about open houses earlier. There's a dozen different people who've recorded great scripts for open houses. There's 3 or 4 different classes. Someone actually there? Yeah. But so that holds true for scripts, that holds true for Ignite, that holds true for any of the topics that we cover as to, you know, how to do command, those things like that. They all live right there, and there's videos on how to do it, and there's courses that you can download if you prefer to read it.
I'll have to mention too is the 2 o'clock call. Got to make sure I plug in for that regional call at 2 o'clock.
Absolutely, it's amazing.
Yeah, I love that call. I missed it this week because I was in a meeting with. Originally, I met with one of the team, the Rainmaker, and then the team. So just
Even if they don't get there, if they go back and watch it and get the content, they can still do it where they get it.
absolutely, I sent it to Rachel's whole team, and they all wrote back. They're like, "Oh my God, all this content's available." I'm like, "Yes." So, and then the KW, you know, any YouTube site has all the ignites that are recorded probably for the last year and the whole session. So you can, if you don't like me talking, you can go find session 8 on a different time and talk to somebody else, right? Listen to somebody else, but coming from different people, I'm sure they talk about different things. And then as well as a lot of things that Brooke puts up as far as command stuff and your data bank and doing all that stuff. So yeah, no, I didn't realize the New England YouTube was there until I Googled it just to figure something out. And I was like, wow. So learned something new yesterday.
There we go. It's always good.
So you think it's about 5 minutes it was? We should give them.
Yeah, another minute.
Okay, we're closing.
Recording in progress.
Wow, we were so busy setting up, we didn't get much done in our questionnaire. So I apologize, Eric.
It's all good.
Someone's on twice, we're echoing.
Is everybody back now?
Yes, sir.
So how did that go? Was it nerve-wracking? Was it easy? Was it weird?
I was in the room with Militia. At first, it was a little bit weird, but as I keep asking questions, I start getting more comfortable and everything start flowing.
Awesome. Anybody else?
I was actually with no one.
Oh,
And the person that after a few minutes, the person I was with, she was already with another room. So she was basically sharing 2 rooms for some reason.
okay.
That was me.
That was technical error probably on my part.
Yeah,
I was
in
like,
our
how
room.
And then I tried to leave a room, went to join his room, and I was gone. It could be me. Who knows?
So the key to this is now that you have it, you have the link to all that stuff. All the different questionnaires and all that information is things like this pre-listing questionnaire or anything you want to do. The best thing to do is practice it with people, whether it's in the office. The same people are here within, the Ignite is befriend people, right? Call up and set up a time that, hey, we're going to practice this. I know we didn't get to it today, but let's work on this pre-listing questionnaire. And then maybe a couple other things, because the key to doing this is practice it within your peers before you go in front of a client, right? It's the more you do it, the less nerve-wracking it is. So, I was talking to Rhonda, who's down in the Rhode Island Market Center, and she mentioned that, there's different ways you can do this, right? You can do it if you can get some of the information. So if you're familiar with this person, so that if this person was a C, right? And you've been working them along the whole way, the last couple of months, a lot more information, you might be able to do some of this over the phone, right? But if this is somebody who you just met, you probably want to take that questionnaire and do it in front of them, right? And say, hey, part of this is, for me sitting down is I need to get to know you. And in order for me to give you the best service possible, I want to make sure that I'm answering all these questions. So it might sound like a lot, but in order for me to provide that service, this is what I need. Are you okay with that, right? Just like Mark asked if they were okay with taking notes, right? You then have this. Same thing is, if you can over the phone, get as much. The more you can get over the phone, the less time it's spent actually doing it for that actual class itself, right? I mean, for that meeting itself. But as part of this it's a relationship, right? And if you just go through the questions and not even have a discussion, like how did you hear about me? Why are you moving? What is motivating? If you already know the answers, like when you had a conversation that said they're moving to Florida, right? So what would make you decide to move there? So you're verifying that they're moving to Florida, but what is the reason behind it, right? And the more you know about their story, you're asking them to talk, first of all, but the more you know about the story, the closer you become in a relationship, correct?
Yes.
And how many people that this is not their cup of tea doing this, that really had a hard time doing it?
It's not my cup of tea.
Like I said, I'm an introvert as well. It's somewhat awkward. How do I come out of my zone? I'm teaching an Ignite class, right? If we were in a room, I am a completely different person. So on Zoom, I am not a good person. I like seeing people's faces, reading the room, able to talk. So how do I improve it? I do it. And for you guys, if it's not your cup of tea, it's going to be vital in your business to do this. It's the more you practice it, the better it becomes. Does that make sense to everybody? And question 2, is everybody able to get the link and find that? Because that's going to be something that you want to favorite, because as far as that's concerned, that's basically your toolkit. The region has put something like this together for you guys to help make your experience that much better. So. Anybody have questions on the pre-listing questionnaire? We all still here or are we still sleeping?
Yep. I'm here.
Okay. So,
Yeah, he didn't say take a nap when he sent you guys to go to the restroom.
the next step is the listing presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second while I prepare the right screen to go into Command. Everybody here, like I said, if you're not familiar with Command, I'll preface a bunch of things. This will be something you learn. If you're a little bit familiar with Command, this will be something nice to know where to get it. But the key is, and like Mark said, no matter what you're using, a CRM, able to put your database in somewhere is key. The second part is you're all new, right? This is not something that you have to become an expert at everything in Command now, but how you're going to get better is spending some time. So same thing when you're trying to figure out your day, and we all don't have a lot of business right now, right? So putting on your calendar, because if it's on your calendar, that means it's important. If it's not on your calendar, it means it doesn't exist, is putting some time to go through in Command and start creating listing presentations, start doing some playing around with all the different things that you have. And like I said, Brooke has some good things inside the New England YouTube videos on different things within Command, but it will behoove you later on, the more familiar with it is, all of a sudden, if something comes up and you don't know what you're doing, and it's 6 o'clock on a Friday night, the likelihood of getting somebody there locally to help might be tough. The good news is there's a help button that connects you to Austin where they have tech support. They might be able to help you. So bear with me as I stop sharing my screen for a moment.
How many of you guys have had listings so far? Anybody? So it's been mostly buyers for the folks.
I
that are
have
here.
one. I have a commercial listing.
Okay. And
You're
in your
getting close.
experience, I heard Polly talking. Polly, in your experience was that, where'd you get that listing? How'd that come to fruition?
It was from my sphere. It was from my previous career in the beauty industry. So I've been I have a little niche market that I've been pursuing. So it's a salon and spa in Connecticut.
Very cool. Very cool. And your presentation, when you did it, how did you do that?
Well, it was a soft market basically. I knew them. We had a great rapport, and he had been saying, business was not where he wanted it to be. And then I just continued the conversation and asking questions and asked for the listing.
And that seems to have worked just fine, right?
Yeah.
Guys, that's how the sphere ones can work when you do it correctly. By the way, if that was not as warm as the one that Polly experienced, she could have also called in another hired gun to come help her out. That's another thing that we can do, or talked to the productivity coaching folks or their mentors or ALC members, or talk to the leadership and say, oh my God, I got a listing. What do I do? Right. It's okay to do that. So.
And I did. I'm in the market center, was it 815 in West Hartford. And I went to go see John, and he's just a wealth of information and made me feel confident in doing it. So highly suggest talking with your broker.
Well, I had an agent up in my market center that she did Ignite. She did, we do contracts class. She did contracts class. Was doing all that stuff. And all of a sudden, somebody that she had been talking to, they said, I want to list my house. Can we meet? And she called me in tears saying, oh my God, I have tended all this stuff. I think I know what to do, but everything just went out of my brain, right? So I put her in touch with an experienced agent that does a lot of business and said, hey, would you work with her and help her through this listing? And so they partnered together. They helped her with paperwork. She helped her with that stuff. It was a little bit of a fee, but she walked away and she came in gave me a big hug. And she's just like, oh my God, Mark, I felt, and all I did is make somebody, put people together that can help each other, right? I can tell you from calling into a bunch of different brokerages to get people, Keller Williams, the culture here of helping each other is amazing. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I think the people that struggle the most are the people that don't raise their hand, right? If you have a question, whether it's here after this, right? Mark and I will throw our emails in the chat. We don't want to be spammed, but if you have questions, right? Ask us, right? It's one of those things that we're here to help. If we weren't here to help, we wouldn't be doing this class, right? It's one of those things. You guys grow, we learn from you. So again, if you're not super familiar with Command, it's okay. We'll walk you through how to go through and do this listing presentation. So basically I logged in, it came up to the main screen. In order to understand what all these little applets are, is you click on that and it tells you. So in order for us to do the listing presentation and ignore all these things, I play with Command. Like I say, Mark and I don't sell. I'm not allowed to sell based on my leadership role. So when I'm doing this is me practicing, right? This is me understanding. Or working with an agent and showing them how, and it saves it. So click on designs. Now we're going to go create our design. So you have the choices. So again, we can ignore all that stuff. We're going to do print because that's basically what we're going to print. So designs is kind of like Canva. It's kind of like, it's something that any of these things that you guys use outside to design marketing pieces, all this can be done actually inside Command. And where you saw like the social media post, once I create something, I can literally dump that out to Facebook. I can dump it out to Instagram. So there's different ways of doing this to keep it. So we'll go to listings, easy enough, listing presentations. Now we have templates. So there's 5 different templates. Again, we can all pick and choose what we want, right? We're all different. But the nice thing is somebody, which is KW Design, they've already gone through and put some stuff together. And basically what you're doing is importing your information, changing it for yourself as you go along. So I like red. So we're going to do that. We click on use. Can't tell about my shirt, right? So basically, here's the presentation. Interesting. I've never used this one before. 29 pages. There we go. So what it is we go through, and so each page, the different pages you have here. So we go to this one. Key to note is page 2 on all those presentations are instructions that you are going to want to delete out of it. So as you're doing this, this is just a instruction to go down through, talk about it. You're going to want to make sure you delete it. So in order to delete, you click on that and we hit delete. Do you want to delete current design? Yes. That page disappears. So again, when we go back to images and things of this sort, so we click on here, we want to change. I already have. So basically what I've done is I've put assets in. I'm not an agent, so I don't have a nice headshot yet. But when you headshots, you're going to upload that. You're going to want to upload logos so you can use them in different things. So text as well. You can actually add different things about yourself, like your business phone number, your cell phone number, different things about yourself, and you can use them as you go along. So if I want to do an image and I'm going to brand this as myself, I click on the photo, I go to here, replace image. There we go. My ugly mug is now on this, right? I want to change the DBA name. I go to logos. I want this one right here. Oops, I didn't do it like, so.
He meant to hit replace, guys, not add. If you add it, you add the actual thing in there. If you click the replace button, it actually just swaps them. So they're both very useful.
So now there's coastal lakes and mountains, right? So you basically go through, you're able to put your first, last name, the client's name, all this is editable, right? Type in stuff. And you go through and you pick and choose like this picture, right? So again, depending on what the listing is, if you went to here, right? This is a tough sell, right? So you may not have the picture. You may just put some generic picture in there. You might drive by, take a picture of the place and then upload it if it's a nice picture. But if we wanted to say 123 Main Street. So this piece right here is important. This is the searching the KWLS, which is the MLS. So anything that's Main Street, right? So again, if there was an old file in MLS, depending on what is your state, if they allow you to take that from that, if you don't, please don't, against rules. You take that picture right there. Oops, I hit the wrong button again. Or I did that, right? So we'll go down to this picture. And you're going to go through and you're going to talk about your difference. So you're going to add the property. This is about you now, right? So if you're going through your marketing plan and this is what you're going to type in the pieces of your thing. So you're going to talk about their property, their transaction, the transaction timeline, right? Next one goes into, here's their property, right? 1050 Heather Lane. And you then take a picture in here, dump it in there. You add all the information about it. You run some analysis on it. You go to here, and if we go back here, snapshots, right? This is a nice tool, right? Most people aren't doing it, but you go to snapshots. So now we type in, see if there's anything on Bart on Hills. So here we go right here. There's the piece, right? So it's a little different. I don't know if it's the same state, but you then can take this and now replace it. So now we're here, right? So you go through and you fix it. So you're doing a snapshot of that area, right? Depends on what it is. So, and this is all customizable. If you did a CMA and you wanted to then import this information in, here's how you can do your CMA in a quick, short snapshot. You can have your official CMAs outside of that. But to me, in all these different presentations, I think for me, that basically this looks nice, right? You have all these pictures of them, have a little bit of snapshot. It's all on one page. If people want to know more about it, you can do different things. But basically, you go and make this presentation to be yourself. Whatever you want. The process, right? So if here's a checklist that you do, right? If your process is different, you go through and you change stuff, right? You can go in and change stuff. You can add things. You can do whatever you want to it. So basically, you're going to make this as yourself. You don't like a slide, you don't want something, you delete it. You want to add your own pictures, whatever you guys like. Does this make sense to people? Does this seem difficult? Even I can do it somewhat. So it should be pretty easy for most people that are tech savvy. I showed my son this and he went there and started playing with it the other day. He's 12 and he loved it. So, but it was like, hey, I can design something. So again, this is the one slide that I want to make sure you're going through and you guys want to look at everything, right? You make it your own. The nice thing is, once you make one that has a lot of your information in it, like your marketing plan, your, your process, all that stuff, that's not going to change. All you're going to do is then at the next time you go and use that one, you're going to make a duplicate of it. And then from there, you just change the pictures of the property and the comps. But everything else that's yours, it's the time of doing it once the first time, your marketing plan is going to stay the same unless one house is, a $500,000 house, and then all of a sudden you land a $5 million buyer. Well, you might want to add some stuff, right? But in the whole general scheme of things, the way you do business, the way you present yourself is always going to stay the same. So that's why, again, take some time, practice with this, right? Start making something up a little bit. Make a fake one, right? That you think you want to do is do your own house. You might find it in, I know for us, if it's an expired MLS, you might find some pictures. Make one of your own house, right? And kind of just be able to have it. It allows you to email it to people. So at the end, you can download it. You want to make sure you download it and you click all pages. So the whole item will download so you can print it. It'll save it as a PDF. You can share it. So I have way too many things open. You can share it. Like if it was going to do something, if it was a single page that you wanted to share, you can share that. This whole link, you can send that to somebody. So it is a very powerful tool that I am just touching the basis on it. But if your market center has a, market center tech trainer, schedule a time with that person, right? Schedule a time. The way it works for us is we have a tech trainer. New agents get signed up. You get an hour with him to help set up your marketing profile, to go through a bunch of things, and to start you going. And then he offers classes, right? And then the classes are most on Zoom, but he's able to do it. If you don't have that, look to Google stuff. Like I said, the New England region has it. Some other market centers have it. If you guys don't, I've found things that I want to do outside our market center, but it's a powerful tool if you're going to use it. The more you familiar you get with it, like I said, the assets is a huge part, right? When you go to things of images, right? So if you have a bunch of different pictures that you want, you have your logo. So if you're, just because my name is Mark Lesniak, my sister sells real estate. She's the Lesniak home team, right? So she does have, as part of her assets, is her logo that's always there, that she then in turn uses the Keller Williams Coastal Lakes, but as well as that too. So if you brand yourself, right, with a brand, you're on a team, the team might have these that you use. So it's a powerful tool that if you go into the presentation with something other, to show them what you are, this is going to help to brand you and to set you apart from some people, right? If some people just have a CMA, go in and sit there and talk, how different is it and how powerful it is if you have this whole story behind you of what you do. Now, somebody that's been in here a month and is able to put some slides together because they're techie, right? And they're able to do this, all this stuff so easy and do all that stuff. And they walk in, do you think they're going to know that you're in there for a month? And you're not creating it from scratch. You're just fixing what you have. And if you don't, like this one, like your numbers, you should be able to ask your MCA, your TL to get you these numbers. You might, and they can get you the numbers, right? And you want to just make sure they're relevant within, I got to say, 60 days, maybe. They shouldn't change that much. Quarterly, you might change them. But you know what I'm saying?
If you guys, if you don't have the numbers, right? So this is what Mark is saying is that the proof is in my numbers. I don't have any numbers to show. I change that slide. It says the proof is in our numbers. And then I say median sales price, and I change the date range and say for 2021, KW Metro, KW Lakes, KW whomever. And so the median sales price is now the office's median sales price. Our percentages are the office's percentages. Your office's stories are good to tell. And so if you don't have a story to tell just yet, make sure that you tell the office story because it will be impressive.
Does this make sense to everybody?
Yes, I have a quick question for you.
Absolutely.
So this is essentially, if you've already solidified your your lead and their the listing client is not 100% sold on using you personally as their listing agent. This is something you bring to them to the table, correct?
Absolutely. And even if they are 100% in your early stages, practice, right? Because here's the thing, it could be my cousin, right? That I know they're going to go with me, but if I take the time to put this together and practice, right? Because practice makes perfect, is I show that to them and they leave that lying around, and all of a sudden one of their best friends comes over and starts talking to them. I go, "What's that?" "Oh, that's what my cousin put together for me." "Oh, really? Your cousin put this together for you? That's pretty impressive." Man, yeah, this is the service he gives when she gives when they go out and sell homes. "Oh, wow, that's who I want to be in business with, right?" It's a marketing tool. And the key is, it doesn't make a difference if they're already sold. All you're doing is solidifying it, right? You're going that much deeper that, yes, I know you, but I'm still giving you A1 service, because ultimately it should be a brand that you start branding yourself with. And that was part of my conversation with the team. Is there's 4 people on the team, whether it's A, B, or C, or D that's listing this property, they have the same listing presentation. There's just a different picture, right? They have the same home open house checklist, right? So it wouldn't make a difference. You walk in until you actually, somebody walks around the corner to know which one of the 4 it is, you wouldn't know the difference. So you want to set yourself up that this is the way I do things every single time, no matter what it is. Whether it's a mobile home or a $5 million house, go through the same process. It will become second nature and you will do the right thing all the time. Does that make sense? Does that help answer it?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
But just one quick thing before I let you go. What is the approximate cost to print these things? I mean, I'm new. I got no money.
Yeah. So this one right here is 28 pages. So market centers, I know for our numbers, are probably 13 cents for a color copy.
Right.
So not that much, because you know what I mean? But here's the difference. So you don't have that much. If this $5 total, say if you put it in a nice little binder, all that stuff, $5 total to do this listing presentation, right? But land you a $500,000 house, is it worth it?
The other thing too, Stephen, is if you don't have the money, literally, there's no cash. You just put that in there and do it digital. You send it to them, and then you bring an iPad with you, and you present it on the iPad. And so there are ways to do this. And then the conversation is this: "Hey, Stephen, I can send this to you virtually if you'd like a copy of it. But the reality is, we're trying to go paperless and save some trees. Are you cool with that?" And they go, "Yeah." And you'll go, "Great, let me present to you." And then you just do it like this.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
A lot of people don't like paper anymore either. I mean, I know it's good to have the physical thing and leave it around, but a lot of people don't even want it, especially. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where the share button comes in. Like I said, you download it, so you have it on your media, you share it with them. I wouldn't share it too much ahead of time, like when you're sitting at the kitchen table, maybe, so you can talk about it. But if you give again, what I've always learned is if you share too early, they have a chance to look at it and not, "Oh yeah, no, I got everything I need. I'm good, thanks," right? So, but yes, sharing it digitally works as well. It's just as powerful. The key is you did it, you put the time, you made them feel important, right? So.
Can I ask a quick question about printing the presentation?
Yes.
When you hit that option, there were three choices. One said like bleed. Okay, there we go. Add crop marks, include bleed down. Which would be the ideal one, so I don't waste dollars?
I come from the printing industry, so.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So for us here, we would just do it as the way, not click any one of those buttons, right?
Oh, okay.
Because most copiers or printers that are in an office are standard, right? They're not going to, maybe this one, you could, the CMYK, if they had certain software on it, would work, but most don't. So these would be more if you were downloading it and making a bunch of these and sending it to a printer. They may require you to the crop marks, because they're actually going to do it on a bigger sheet of paper, and then they're going to cut it. so that there's a full bleed, so that if you do it on a printer, see how right here, how the red goes right to the edge?
Yeah.
On a lot of copiers, you're gonna get a white ring around it because they can't print all the way to the edge. So if you're sending it to a printer, you're gonna want to include crop marks in the bleed, so then that way they chop it to the right size. You may be making books for it, so.
Okay,
it's
but if
just
we were just to print it on our own, we don't need any of those.
Nope, none of
Okay.
those, nope.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's a great question. I didn't even pay attention to them. And then when I looked at them, I'm like, that is a very good question. Like I said, I'm not an expert on it because I use it for certain different things. But Inside Command is a super powerful tool that over time, if you first use it for the bare minimum, unless you use a different CRM to get your contacts in there, tag them, start using like the ABCs, right? Drip campaigns, emails, text, however you want to do it, right? It then moves to, you can do presentations from it. You can do buyer presentations. You can do things like just listed, under contract, and post those on social media. It's a powerful tool that it's overwhelming, and it's not that something you have to know today. It's just know that it's available. And when you need help, raise your hand to somebody and say, hey, I need help with this, and it can be done. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions based on that?
I would throw out one more thing, Mark, while we're there, and it's the conversation around, do you have time or do you have money? Because there are companies, most of your market centers might have somebody who would do this for you too for a few bucks. And so then the question becomes, is it something that I want to leverage and spend some money on rather than my time? And for most of us, when we're brand new starting out, the answer is no, I don't have the money, I have the time. So go do it. And then save those things so you don't have to spend an hour doing each listing presentation. You've already done 90% of the work. In fact, for most of us, we haven't done a listing yet. Well, I would encourage you to go create your listing presentation now, particularly since we don't have numbers to share that are our own. Go get the office's numbers, put them in there. And then when the listing opportunity shows up, you're ready to go do it by just entering some basic information. And you don't have to spend 2, 3, 4 hours trying to figure stuff out because you've already got your whole template set up for yourself. And the same would be true for a buyer consult. The same would be true for pre-list packets. Anything that you're going to do more than once, create the template for yourself here and just have it ready to go.
Another source that I just found out about was yesterday. We had a mortgage rep at our office, one of the mortgage reps that we use typically. And he had a call night and a couple of things like that. I got a ton of leads from him. And he also invited us to something called List Reports, which is fully automated marketing materials. I just got the invitation today. And what he showed us was a lot of what Command has, but more automated. And it's pretty incredible. And he pays for it and he shares it with us. And it's free. So maybe one of the mortgage reps in your office may have the same thing.
Some of your companies have partnerships with like Michael Lewis Marketing Suite, or with, who's the other one? Can't remember his name. At any rate, check with your leadership. There are different programs that are available. Some of them are free, some of them cost a little bit of money. And then like Joelle was just saying, there are obviously the mortgage people want to put their mortgage information in there. If you have a good partnership with them, by the way, if you don't like them, don't use that. Right? If you think they're lousy, don't use that. Build partnerships with vendors that you trust and that you would want to be part of your team, because they're becoming part of your team when you put them in your listing presentation. So so make sure that if you're going to take advantage of those things, make sure they're people that you want to have as partners. And so, yeah, but again, there are lots of ways to do this. There are lots of different ways to make this. What I would say is create a system for it so you don't have to do it more than once. Or when you do, it's not the whole thing every time.
And like Mark said, is design some of this stuff. So I just pulled up Just Listed real quick. Again, pick a design and you use the same one every time, right? All you're doing is swapping out the picture. But at some point in time, if this is the route you're going to use and you choose it, pick whatever you're going to do and use that, right? So that's great. With the mortgage partner, the one thing I always shy away from that is that's not yours, right? If all of a sudden because of changing times, he decides to stop using that, and you've been using it for 6 months or a year, you're starting back at scratch, right?
Yeah,
Good, the good thing about here is this is yours. You design how you want. You have the same look. Again, it's talking about branding. If I brand Mark Lesniak as my name, and that's the brand I'm going to use, I create one of these just listed, and all I'm doing is swapping out the picture, a couple things, everything else is done for me, right? At the one point is the first time you do that, whether it's a listing presentation, for sale, coming soon, just sold, it's the time to create the first one. After that, it's just plugging and playing after that. So.
One thing too, while we're talking about the power of command and why it's so cool, I would say this, Joelle, if that's not a copyrighted thing, and it's just a flyer that you like the format of, command allows you guys to drop a PDF in, and it deconstructs it and turns it into a format that you can then alter every single component. And so to say that differently, you can grab any printed material, scan it, drop it in here as a PDF, and command will deconstruct every single part and turn it in so it goes, oh, that was a picture. I know that's a picture. We're going to turn that into a picture slot. So if Mark wants to click on that, highlight it, he can alter it and change the picture, change the logo. It knows these things and it goes, okay, I think I recognize what this is, and it will turn it into that. So it literally does some behind the scenes magic. By the way, that's not super fast. It takes a minute or more, and yet it's so worth it if you get a complete flyer like this where you want to actually alter it and make it your own. But again, I am not an attorney. I am not a judge. I am not a home inspector. I am not a copyright guy. I will tell you, if it's copyrighted, don't do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions on command? Like I said, that was just and we're not pitching it. We're just trying to tell you that before you go looking elsewhere, take a look at it. And the fact that it is powerful, like I just learned something that Mark just told me. I didn't realize it did that. I know you can upload stuff, but I knew it's like InDesign, right? It's a powerful tool. And the nice thing is it's owned by Keller Williams. So that's the nice thing, is it's not going away. It's not a third-party app that Gary Keller has added. It's part of that suite, right? The suite that we all get as being part of Keller Williams. So when I show people from other brokerages they drool, because they are paying some third party to do it. They're working outside and have to develop that. So the nice thing is it is here and it is available to all you agents. With that being said, anything more on command?
One more thing. So for those of you guys who decided that you had more money than time, right? That'll happen later. For some of you guys, it'll happen sooner. When you create those, you can actually click a button and send it to printers as well. So from the site, you don't have to download, do anything. There are actually vendors who you can click a button and send it to directly, and they'll print it for you. And then you can either have it mailed or do whatever. So that would hold true with postcards if you're going to do that, and or if you're going to do listing presentations. If you wanted to make a generic listing presentation that wasn't specific to a person, you could have it bound in a hardcover book. Some people like to do that. This is their pre-list packet, and it's not specific to their property. It's just a generic pre-list packet, but it comes in a fancier format. So there's all sorts of cool things you can do. There's a bunch of people you should follow, but Brooke Silva, our regional tech trainer, is somebody that you should be paying attention to, because she's teaching all sorts of cool stuff around this all the time.
And I think you guys probably all have the ability, but like there's I think an Ignite Facebook page. Get on that. There's a Facebook page, Command Your, I should know what it is because I invited a couple people. But it's a command page that there's people like Brooke around the country that are teaching this stuff, and at high level, like, hey, do you want to learn how to do this? And I'm like, it can do that. And they clicks links to video. So the deeper and the longer you get into it and you want to start doing it because you have the time, do it. You may find out later on that you want to sub it out and have somebody else do it. Awesome. But the best part is you know how to do it. And if we don't have money, because not all of us do, right? It's if you have the time, utilize your time to do it, right? Brand yourself, make a brand, and then stick with it. It's the people that try something new every week because they think it's a new flashy toy or whatever. Be you. Find something that you're familiar, comfortable with, and use it. Doesn't make a difference what it is. It could be even in their database, right? We're being recorded, and if somebody turns me on, I'm in big trouble. Is I don't care if you put all your leads, your contacts in an Excel spreadsheet or Google sheet, because that's what you feel comfortable with and that's the best way you do. I know agents that sell $20 million a year and that's what they do. Guess what? I'm not telling them they're wrong. That's what they're comfortable and happy with doing. I'd love for them to do something different. And I suggest you try something, but it's ultimately pick something, stick with it. So we have about 20 minutes or so left. So basically it's now recap and basically anything that you guys have questions about that we talked about, something that you guys learned today or you know, brought to light, like, oh my gosh, I have somebody that I've been talking to, this is going to really work. Please share. It could be an awkward 20-minute silence, right, Mark?
Back to the Musa example that he gave about the $800,000 home. I don't know if that was fictional or not, but you know, the interesting irony is that, you know, sellers they're not uninformed. So of course, the more the house sells for, the more the realtor makes. And so I don't see, you know, I mean, not that they're trying to bolster up a listing price that's out of range, but you know, it's just a strange dynamic there. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but
Well, it was the home buyer, the seller that wanted the high 800,000. It wasn't the agent. The agent was trying to talk him out of it. So
I would say this, you know, there's multiple strategies. So if somebody came to me with that objection, you know, I think I want to list it at 800,000 and I'm looking at it going, okay, you know, Musa's example was it's $400,000 house. I would do what Mark just said, which is basically say, you know, and again, here's another, this time's like that time. Have you ever, do you know? And so the conversation goes like this, Stephen, have you ever heard of an auction? And you go, yeah, okay. And I go, great. So what happens at an auction? You know, we put something up for bid and we started at $1. And the cool thing that happens is that all those people in that room, they start bidding on it because they know that for $1, it's a super good deal. Well, let's say it's worth $100. And so at some point it gets to be $100. And Mark and I are competing and we've created what's called auction mentality. And now we want to win. And so Mark might bid $110 for something that's only worth $100. And the cool thing in real estate is that when that happens, we can start the price at $1 and the market will very quickly tell us what the value is because people will come in and they'll bid what they're willing to pay. And they're not going to think it's worth $1. Everybody gets that that's not really what it's going to go for. And so they'll just bid it to the price where the market feels that it's worth it. And if Mark and I are competing enough, we might pay more for that because we know that there's lots of people. The cool thing about that is that they can get the feeling that there's 5, 8, 10 other people who want it. Therefore, their desire for that thing is valid. And so instead of going home with buyer's remorse, they buy it and they're happy and they typically won't change their minds because now they just got a deal and they got to win. And so what we can do is we can price it at whatever price we feel is relevant and start the bidding process. And the nice thing is, Stephen, that if it gets to a point and the market has told us that they're only going to buy it for $500 or $500,000 in this instance, we don't have to sell it for that because there's a bunch of other contingencies and we can just pull it back and say, we've decided not to sell because it doesn't make sense for us right now. And we get to go home. So that's a no harm, no foul situation. But I would prefer to do that than to price it at 800 and have nobody show up. How do you feel about that?
oh, I have, yeah, I'm not considering in the least to recommend a much higher listing price. I mean, I'm down with what you guys are all saying. As a matter of fact, when you talk about auctions, have you seen the show Lux Listings at all?
Sure.
Fantastic show, fun show. But it's fairly accurate. I mean, the auctions that they produce and shoot, it's just right, spot on. You know, I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. You know, but no, I was just making conversation for the most part
Well, one thing we have to remember too, guys, is that you're learning in a market that's going to be vastly different from many markets, right? This is an atypical market. It's a complete seller's market, at least for most of us. And what you'll find is that they have such an upper hand that you guys are learning to put in offers so that you can compete, that waive all the buyer's rights. That is atypical. Remember that is atypical. Normally, there's some variation where it's closer to neutral, or one party or the other has a slight upper hand. Right now, sellers tend to have a vastly superior upper hand, and that's atypical. So just be aware of that as we're getting into this industry, to understand that this is not going to last forever. And so your ability to win bids is going to improve the longer that you're in the industry here. So just remember that.
I have a question.
No, it's fascinating, frankly, because my brother put his house on the market about a month ago, and they listed for 800, and they got 940. So I mean, I don't know if they mispriced it or whatever they did, but it's just an interesting market, I should say.
There's a place up where I am, right? The CMA said it should go for this price. And clearly, I mean, it went to, like, there was two teams that worked on it, two powerful, and the buyer wanted more, but they said, listen, this kind of scenario, but it wasn't so drastic. Buyer wanted 7, and the most that CMA would put would be about 595, 600. So you're off by 100,000, which is a lot. And less experienced person lost it, because they just said, well, this is what I can, there's nothing I could do. More experienced agent said, listen, we're going to put this price, but we're not determining it. And we don't have to sell it if you don't want that price. But internally, even if somebody offered, you put on for 600 and somebody only offers 650, you can still say no. There's no, you can choose it. But they said, listen, exactly what Mark just talked about. Let's put it here. The market will drive it up if it's good. If it's not, then we come back and look at it, right? Market drove it up to 740, right? And it was crazy. Like, there's no way that should, but that person asked, and we sat down, we had a conversation, like, why? And I said, well, it's how you present it to them. And Mark has had numerous good things to talk about, like the buyers will choose what they want to pay. And let's put it in an option, like something that people have a thought, like they might be getting a bargain or whatever. And then next thing you know, all these bids came in, and it's so let people, you know what I mean? You got to have that conversation that if it's going to sell at a higher price, the market will let that know. It's not, if you put a house on it that's worth 600,000, put it like Mark said, 300,000, it's not selling at 300,000. Everyone is going to see it on the listing and say, oh my gosh, that's a bargain, let's go. It's
one
not
of the reasons for that too, even in a bad market that happens, right? Even in a market that's lousy for sellers, what happens is a good agent will look at that, or an investor will look at that and go, holy Hannah, look at that. That's a deal. I can turn and sell that for 30,000 more tomorrow. I'll buy it for that. Right. So then all of a sudden, then the next guy goes, well, I'll do it for 20,000. And so it marches its way up, even in a market that's not like this, because nobody's willing to let somebody else get that deal. So just be aware of that. Like if you saw something that was worth 100,000 more than, if it was a car, if it was a sports card, a memorabilia thing, if it was a bicycle, I see a picture of a bicycle, you don't care what it is. If you see something that's vastly underpriced and you knew that you could turn around and sell it without much effort and make a lot of money, you would do that. And the rest of the world's like that too. And they recognize deals, at least people who are paying attention do. And so you don't have to worry as a seller that you're, as long as it's marketed right. Right. So, and for real estate, that's the MLS, and that's us having conversations with people. So the auction is never problematic as long as you recognize, I'm going to get it to a point where the market tells us this is what it's worth in today's market, like no kidding right now. And if I choose not to sell it, I don't have to sell it.
So I had this situation where I know a person who's trying to sell his house. His house is approximately, by CMA, is about approximately $580,000 to $600,000, right? That's why I asked that question, because that person wants at least $800,000 for the property. Now, looking at the market right now, there are not too many houses available. And, you know, so the demand is high for the properties. That's why I was concerned. Should we post this property? Should we take the contract? Because even if that person is, you know, asking for a lot of money, but they're looking at the market, I think we might be able to sell it for not 800,000, maybe less or maybe more. What do you think about that?
It's a lot. That's a big percentage, right? So you're saying it's a
I know.
$600,000 property that he's going to try to market for 33% more than it's worth. What I would
Yeah.
say is this. Hey, Musa, I think that your house might be worth 800. I don't know what the market's going to bear today. I know it's wildly competitive. Here's what I suggest we do. Why don't we price it at a price that will cause the biggest number of people to show up and bid it to where it is, and then we make a decision whether you want to sell it for that price or wait for a while.
Okay.
And that way you don't have to worry about an $800,000 stigmatized listing. I mean, so that part of that conversation might go like this. Musa, there are so few listings on the market right now. If you were to see one that had been on the market for 30 or 45 days, what would you think about that property?
That it's not selling.
Well, yeah. Why do you think something might not sell?
Something wrong with it?
Because it's overpriced, or there's something wrong with the property.
Great. And so what I hear you saying, Musa, and you, by the way, you're really smart. You're like most consumers, is that if everything's selling right now and I see something that's not selling, I'm going to immediately assume that there must be something wrong with that place, won't I?
Right.
Yeah. Do you think that that's what you want to have happen for your property?
No.
Okay, great. So let's put it at a price that will cause the most people to show up, and we can figure out what the price is and then decide whether we want to actually sell the property.
Right.
And that's just, I mean, that's how I would handle that one. I'm not taking an $800,000 listing right now if it's a $600,000 property. That, by the way, most of you guys are new enough that you don't know it costs you money and time, and a combination of both, to the tune of thousands of dollars worth of marketing and time for listings. A lot of top agents know exactly what their number is. I will tell you that in my experience, it's probably somewhere, depending on how much marketing you do, $2,500 to $5,000 to market a property correctly. It costs you money to do that. So don't think that it doesn't. You're going to spend time and effort doing that. And if it doesn't come to fruition, you spent it, right? Your commodity was the time. You spent the time and didn't get anything as a return. That's a bad use of your investment. So don't think that it doesn't cost you anything. You're going to work. Yeah, Louis, I'm including time. I'm including your time in that.
Well, and then pictures. So we got to think about this. If it's a 6 to 800,000, you're going to take pictures, right? The new thing is drones, right? So all the pictures, the drones, whatever marketing, I mean, in your time to market it on Facebook, right? Or however you got MLS that time, you're going to your time spent at open houses, brokering deals back and forth, right? And only to have the market bear 650, because none of us know what's going to happen. It could change in a snap. And he says, no. So you have to have some sort of agreement. And again, it's a tough thing. Is the big question to ask Musa, why do you want 800? I'm trying to figure this out. Why do you want 800? Is there some reason why? And if he says just because, then nobody's going to do it for that. And it's not worth your time at that point. If he says, I need to pay bills, okay, but how much do you really need? You know what I'm saying? Is there a reason why? So,
one of the scripts too that I would bring up, guys, is this, Musa, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but when we sell the house, we actually have to sell it twice. I'm not sure, typically anyway. And what I mean by that is that we have to sell it to a buyer who's willing to pay the price. And then the vast majority of buyers actually need to get a mortgage. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Great. And so one of the things that's required of a mortgage is that the bank's going to need to come along and say, yeah, I'll give you that much money for it. So in effect, we actually have to sell it to a buyer who's willing to pay that amount. And then we have to sell it to a bank and prove to the bank that it's worth that. And the bank, unfortunately, is not as excited about moving into this property. They're excited about having an asset that's worth what they're going to loan on it. And so that becomes more problematic. And so if we don't have anything to prove that it's worth 800,000, we will run that risk. Now, we could get a cash buyer, and yet let's just go ahead and let the market determine what that is and see if we can get there. But just understand that we might need to sell it a second time, and the bank's going to be the one, and they're not as excited about the asset being worth 800 as your buyer might be.
So if a person is approved for, let's say he's pre-approved for $840,000, right, worth of loan, and then buyer agrees and he's like, oh, I'm gonna buy this property, right? And then it goes to, financing. Can lender decline to finance that certain house because they think that it's not worth $800,000?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to that. The answer, quite honestly, it would be whether they have enough money to cover the delta. So let's use your 600, 800 example, right? It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter that they're willing to loan me $800,000. If I go to get a $600,000 place, they're not going to give me 800 for it, right? They're going to give me a percentage of the value. They want to have some equity built into that property. So with a conventional financing, it's going to be, call it 3.5%. So if the place is worth 600,000, they want me to have 600,000 times 3.5% down, which means that if I want to go buy that property now, I have to have $200,000 in cash plus 3.5% of $600,000. That's a lot of dough. Now, I could get the financing if I had that much cash in the bank, but that's, the question is, do I really want to pay that? And so I would be surprised to see somebody pay 800 for a 600 in this market. I would not be surprised to see it go for 100,000 over. And one of the questions that somebody was asking earlier was relative to, how do we know what the market's going to bear? We don't, and we're looking backwards. And what we know is that in an increasing market, when we look backwards, we're looking at a lower price. So we don't know what the real number is right now. There could be an extra 20 buyers who have cash and are willing to overspend on something. There likely are. And yet, at some point, with what's going on, people will get the feeling that they're overpaying for something, and they'll choose not to spend the extra $200,000 on a $600,000 property. So we don't know whether that's going to happen tomorrow or the next day or 6 months from now or a year from now. We do know there's 5 million houses missing from the United States right now that should have been built, that haven't been built. And so there's going to continue to be an inventory problem. Well, we just don't know when it's going to start to affect us.
Right. Well, thank you so much for the conversation.
Any other questions? So to touch on Mark's, if there isn't, is the fact, like he just mentioned, inventory problem, right? So as a newer agents, you become more of buyer's agents than listings, right? And I know this whole thing's about listings, but one thing that we didn't touch upon is how to get more listings is find out where your buyers want to move and knock on doors, right? Mark, we talked about in the mastermind. Be the catalyst. Don't wait for things to come on MLS, because if you wait for them to come on as hey, here's a house, you're now with 25 to 30 other buyers up in the area. They showed an open house. It took an hour to get in on Saturday, and there were cars for a mile up and down the road for a $350,000 cape in Epping, New Hampshire. Now, let me tell you, that it wasn't worth the price, but at the same time, it's crazy, right? So basically find a neighborhood, right? A town, and start digging deep to what your buyer wants to do and make that happen. How do you get a listing? Knock on the door and say, hey, would you be willing to sell your house? I have a buyer. Well, I don't, let me do a CMA. If I could get you $600,000 for your house, would you sell your house? Well, yeah, but where would I go? Tell me where you want to go. And you start a daisy chain, right? But if you do that kind of work in the beginning, when you have time, it helps you learn. Guess what you do? If I now find a house for Mark, right? The house that he wanted when it wasn't really there. And then all of a sudden that buyer, that person that sold their house, they found a house. How many referrals do you think you're going to get out of that? It's a ton of extra referrals on top of a couple listings, because now you get the listing, you get the buy, the buy side, you get, but I can tell you right now, one of the agents in our area did that, right? They need a commercial property. They said, I need this. I'm growing. I need this. They went and knocked on 5 doors and said, I have a buyer. Would you be willing to sell? And some person said, yes, for this amount of money. Went back to the buyer and said, would you pay this for this property? They said, yes. Guess what? The deal happened. That person now, who is a business owner, that as a investor, as Stephen talked about investors. That person now has bought 5 different, and this was about 8 months ago, 5 different properties now, investment wise, with this one agent. So it goes a long way. That's how you get your referrals. That's how you do it. So when we talk about being like inventory low, let's make our own inventory. It's going to be work, but it's worth it, right, Mark?
I just threw in the chat a couple of places where you guys might want to explore for people who have multiple properties to sell. So remember, it's life events that tend to do that, or it's, for builders, it's their job. They're making money that way. The reality is that it's life change. So how do I find the life change? It's in the newspaper. It's posted on Facebook, right? Birth, death, graduation, marriage, all these things, they are life events that cause people to make changes. And go find those. How do I find those people? And that's really what you want to do, is be in front of them. And again, the last thing I threw in the chat was the people who have multiples: a divorce attorney, a probate attorney, a builder, an investor. These are all people who have lots and lots of properties, or come into contact with people who have lots and lots of properties. You should build relationships with those people. Find one of those for your database and create them as raving fans.
Thanks for everything, guys.
Thank you guys for coming. Anything else before we depart?
Just a quick
You're supposed to
question.
put your email in, Mark.
Oh,
Put your email in.
Quick question. So let's say this guy's did open and a luxury listing fell in your lap. Does Keller have a particular place that we would market that?
You can use the luxury branding when in your marketing. As long as the property it's not a person that qualifies, it's a person. It's the property, I mean. And so you can use luxury materials to market that property. And there's courses relative to that. You can go look at the luxury stuff. Brady Sandall is in charge of the luxury division. There's likely people in your market center who would do that as well and could help you out with that. But yeah, so you'd market it for the most part in the same channels that you would, and you would use luxury marketing.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
for a
guys.
great class.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Cheers, Mark.